Chapter 1869. It seems that he's trash. Seeing that Yin Lao Er was unfazed by his provocations, Gospel realized that Yin Lao Er would not dare to take the initiative to attack him. He muttered to himself and charged at Yin Lao Er. As a shield warrior, Yin Lao Er had short legs and arms. The longest range of his skills, charge, was only 5 meters. Gospel's control over the distance of his skills was very precise. After he reached Yin Lao Er's range, he stealthily stepped on a few more gravity talismans and continued to throw holy orbs at Yin Lao Er. You didn't move when I was far away, but now that I'm right in front of you, you still don't dare to fight back? At this distance, aside from charge, you can't use any other skills. Yin Lao Er had been able to survive in Chuanjin for so long without suffering any losses. He was a shrewd fellow. Initially, Yin Lao Er had only listened to Wuji's orders and ignored his opponent. Now that his opponent had taken the initiative to approach him, he immediately guessed that his opponent was up to no good. Of course, he would not fall into a trap so easily. Thereupon, Yin Lao Er reached for his waist and pulled out a musket. He aimed at Gospel and fired. Wang Yu was the one who had created the flintlock, and every member of the Quanzhen sect had one. As an offhand weapon, not only did the flintlock deal more damage than the main hand, but it also had a knockback effect to a certain degree. This effect was not very useful against bosses, but it was very effective against players, especially those with low judgment. Bang! The gunshot rang out and Gospel's HP bar suddenly dropped. At the same time, he felt as if someone had pushed him, and he involuntarily took a step back. Yin Lao Er had only retaliated out of habit to show that he was not just going to take a beating. However, as soon as Gospel took a step back, the gravity talismans under his feet suddenly appeared in front of Yin Lao Er. Damn! Seeing the trap under Gospel's feet, Yin Lao Er felt a chill run down his spine. Although Yin Lao Er didn't know what powerful attack methods his opponent had, he knew what would happen to him if he was controlled by the gravity talisman. No matter how low the opponent's damage was, 30 minutes was more than enough to grind him to death. Not to mention, priests had shameless skills like self-destruct, regeneration, and invulnerability. On the off chance that his opponent used invincible holy light and his recovery skill, he wouldn't be able to escape either. Although Yin Lao Er wasn't as strong as the experts present, he knew his own limit. He knew that his opponent was still a peak-class expert. Naturally, he wouldn't underestimate his opponent. Now that he had seen his opponent's sinister intentions, Yin Lao Er did not dare to act rashly. Faced with the constant harassment from Gospel's holy light balls, Yin Lao Er did not advance to attack. Instead, he stood where he was and fired. However, as long as his opponent got a little closer, Yin Lao Er would immediately retreat and widen the distance, fearing that he would be controlled. After all, they were golden partners. Compared to shield warriors, priests' legs weren't long. Since Yin Lao Er deliberately widened the distance between them, it was very difficult for a non-combat class like Gospel to get close to Yin Lao Er. Just like that, the two of them began an extremely boring chase in the arena. Between the two of them, one had high HP and defense, while the other could recover HP. Moreover, their damage output was very low. Even if they threw a few attacks at each other, it wouldn't hurt at all. After watching the violent race for another 30 minutes, the two were teleported off the stage amidst the boos of the audience. The third round ended in a draw. At this time, the audience had to give in to the motley crew. If you can't win, run had always been one of the labels of a motley crew. Not only did they play dirty in the elimination round, but they also ran all the way to the arena of a top-tier tournament. Such a wretched fighting style was really hard to describe. Of course, although the audience and players looked down on the motley crew's fighting style, they were proud of it. Good job. 1 for 1, it wasn't a loss. As soon as Yin Lao Er came off the stage, everyone immediately surrounded him and gave him a thumbs up. At the end of the day, he was just an amateur expert. To be able to die together with a world-class expert was worth it no matter how they looked at it. "You're flattering me," Yin Lao Er said humbly. "I was almost tricked just now. Luckily, I listened to Wuji and didn't attack first. These guys are all professionals. Of course, they won't waste time with you. But we're different." Wuji taught everyone. As long as you don't lose points, you can do anything. You can use the same move 100 times. As long as it's effective, it's a good method. Wuji is right, Wuji is right. The group of people began to flatter each other, and the audience was dumbfounded. Okay, what the hell is this? Not only are they not ashamed, they're proud of it. It's hard for normal people to understand such a realm. Why are you chasing him? As Wuji said, professionals cared about their reputation. On the free team's side, Gospel received a completely different treatment. A group of people pointed at Gospel with a face full of sorrow for his misfortune and anger for his inaction. It was shameful and conspicuous to be led around the ring by the nose. It was better to just die. "You're blaming me? I'm a support class. Who let me go up?" Gospel was not the kind of person who wouldn't fight back. Being criticized like this, Gospel immediately turned on his counterattack mode. Everyone pondered for a moment when they heard this, and their gazes fell on Wade in unison. That's right. Gospel, a cleric, forced others to go up. The one to blame for this was not Gospel, but the captain who blindly gave orders. He said that the opponent in the third round would be the strongest, but the opponent sent out a shield warrior who also didn't have any output. Wade was the main culprit. What are you looking at me for?" Seeing that his subordinates all looked unkind, Wade panicked a little. Everyone asked in unison with dark faces, "Captain, who's going up for the fourth round? Is it still a support class?" "This," Wade hurriedly said, I can't do it." "Good. That's what you said. We didn't force you." Everyone curled their lips and rolled their eyes at Wade. Wade sighed and shook his head helplessly. People's hearts were scattered, and the team was not easy to lead. Poor Wade still didn't understand why his men, who were normal at the beginning of the game, had become like this now. Little did he know that all of this was under the control of Wuji. As the boss of Chuanjin, Wuji's men were also top-notch experts. Even Mingdu, who was not a top-notch expert, had a natural sense of superiority. His eyes grew on the top of his head, and he was unconvinced by anyone, let alone those world-class top-notch experts. Especially in this kind of commercial team, everyone was forced together, and the emotional foundation was not very strong. Once there was a setback, everyone naturally wouldn't think that it was their fault, but they would question each other at the first moment. As a result, the gap between the team players would grow bigger and bigger. Chapter 1870. As we all know, the most frightening thing about Wuji is not that he is resourceful, but that this guy is best at controlling people's minds. In the face of an opponent whose overall strength is several levels higher than his own, Wuji certainly has to attack the mind. At the beginning of the game, Wade's challenge to the amateur team was a decision that puzzled the others in the free team. If they had really pinched a soft persimmon, then it would have been fine. At most, everyone would have despised Wade as their captain. However, Wuji had taken a fancy to this point. At the start of the match, he threw out 4 aces and 4 twos. This set of moves directly stunned the people of the free battle team. In such a state, the free team naturally began to shift the blame to each other, and in the end, the responsibility was pushed to Wade, the captain. The intensification of the conflict within the free team was not accidental, but an inevitable result. Wade was also unlucky. Before the game, he was squeezed by Pantheon, thinking that he had found a reason to bully the amateur team. Who knew that less than a third of the game, his team was about to be played apart. At this time, Wuji was arranging the players for the next game. After losing 3 consecutive games, the other side is now united on the surface, but divided at heart. Wade can't mobilize his players, so he will definitely go up himself. In the fourth game, Old Cow will go and directly blow up their captain and make them fall apart. Yes, understood. Wang Yu responded and turned into a white light, teleporting to the arena at the same time as Wade. Wow. Seeing Wang Yu and Wade come on stage, the audience was excited and could not help cheering. To be honest, everyone had to be prepared to fall asleep before watching the match of the motley team. Half of the 10 people in this group of bastards were not here to compete, and the 20 were here to make up the numbers. Therefore, there was a 50% chance that the motley team's match would be so boring that it would be better to die. However, as a rare expert in the motley team, Wang Yu's match would never be that boring. As for Wang Yu's opponent, Wade, who could be the captain of a top team like the Free Team, was naturally second to none. This person's profession was the same as the invisible person in the first round. He was also an assassin. His nickname was Spider-Man. Together with the invisible person, he was known as one of the 2 benchmarks of the assassin world. He was also a master in the free battle team. At this moment, he was facing off against Wang Yu, this ragtag team captain cum expert. It could be called an ace against an ace. Everyone had just experienced a long and boring duel, and now was the perfect time to wash their eyes. Unlike Wang Yu, who only cared about fighting, Wade, as the leader of the free battle team, naturally carried more things than Wang Yu. 3 matches had already been played in the first round, and the ragtag team was already far ahead. Not only was the morale of the independent team low, but everyone's emotions were also on the verge of collapse. It must be known that Wade's opponent was an amateur team. Getting such a result in the first match had the most direct impact on Wade, because the biggest responsibility lay in the captain's poor command. If they couldn't take down Wang Yu this round, not only would the team's morale completely collapse, but Wade would also lose his prestige as the team's captain. Whether or not he could still be the captain after the competition was over was another matter. Thus, Wade had to win this round. An assassin's fighting style was basically based on stealth, and Wade was no exception. When the countdown ended, Wade immediately activated stealth, and his figure disappeared from the ring in a flash. Immediately afterward, Wade, who was in stealth, activated swift movement and rushed at Wang Yu at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, Wade rushed behind Wang Yu. Ah, so fast. Is it going to end like this? Although there was no figure of Wade on the ring, the audience could see Wade's shadow from their point of view. Seeing Wade rush behind Wang Yu so quickly, everyone could not help but break into a sweat for Wang Yu. Assassin's damage was ranked second among all professions, second only to mages. Their explosive damage was so high that they could instantly kill any non-tank profession of the same level. As an expert among experts, there was no need to doubt Wade's damage. Fighters were not a profession with thick skin and thick flesh. Now that Wade had appeared behind Wang Yu, the high damage of backstab coupled with the damage bonus from behind, Wade only needed 1 backstab, and Wang Yu would probably be stabbed half to death, not to mention a set of explosive skills. Ayaya! This Wade really doesn't know what's good for him. However, while the audience was breaking into a sweat for Wang Yu's teammates were not the least bit flustered. At the same time, 9 states 3 mountains 5 peaks could not help but sigh for Wade. Hearing 3 mountains 5 peaks words, a question mark suddenly popped up on the head of the rebel team's captain next to him. Before the rebel could ask why he said that, in the ring, Wade had already used backstab on the back of Wang Yu's heart. Who knew that at this moment, Wang Yu's feet would stagger and his body would twist, putting on an extremely strange posture. Wade's backstab hit the air. Seeing this scene, everyone in the arena directly widened their eyes. This move again? Wang Yu's dodging technique was no longer unfamiliar in the eyes of the audience. From the first round until now, in less than an hour, it had already appeared on the field 3 times, and each time, he just happened to dodge the skills from behind. Could it be that this was the standard dodging skill of the motley crew? At this moment, not only were the audience extremely surprised, but the professional experts were also dumbfounded. Of course, what surprised the experts was not Wang Yu's dodging posture, but why Wang Yu was able to dodge at that time. It had to be known that whether it was the first or second round, the opponent's back attack was fair and aboveboard, and the dodger was also prepared. Wade, who was behind Wang Yu, had entered stealth at the beginning of the game, and the moment backstab was used, stealth only came into contact. But Wang Yu seemed to have long since known that the opponent was going to appear behind him and made a timely dodging movement. This was truly somewhat unbelievable. Could it be that Wade had sensed it the moment backstab was used and then reacted? This was even more unbelievable than just predicting the opponent's movement. No, impossible. Wade's eyes were about to pop out of his head when he was so sure that his attack had missed. He had clearly been in stealth all this time, so how could he still be dodged? Could it be that the opponent had a skill that could see through stealth? Hee. Just as Wade was surprised, he saw a faint smile, and a palm slap toward Wade from behind. As the master of the house, Wade was still very strong. If it had been an ordinary person, hearing Wang Yu's laughter behind them, they would certainly have subconsciously turned around. Wade, however, did not think about it and rolled on the ground to avoid Wang Yu's attack. The moment he rolled, Wade's head was down, his hands spread out toward Wang Yu, and 2 silver threads shot toward Wang Yu. Chapter 1871. Silver Thread. Shoot 2 poisonous silver threads at the target. After hitting the target will fall into a weakened state. This was Spider Wade's signature skill. Wang Yu reacted very quickly. Facing the silver thread, Wang Yu leaned back slightly, and the silver thread flew past Wang Yu's face. Just then, Wade's hands jerked and his figure flashed and appeared behind Wang Yu. Then Wade pressed his hands against the ground and kicked Wang Yu's back with both feet. Swallow flying kick. After being kicked by Wade, Wang Yu's feet were kicked off the ground and he was suspended in the air. Just as Wang Yu flew up, Wade opened his hands again and the silver thread in his hands flew out and wrapped around Wang Yu. When Wang Yu flew to the highest point in the air, Wade appeared behind Wang Yu. His arms wrapped around Wang Yu, who was wrapped in the silver thread in the air, and suddenly fell, smashing Wang Yu head first into the ground. Li Lianhua! Bang! After a loud noise, the ground of the arena was smashed into a cloud of smoke. As a top expert, Wade's fighting level was naturally needless to say. From the first time he used silver thread to when Wang Yu was smashed head first into the ground, although this set of skills seemed complicated, it only took about a second from beginning to end. This set of smooth movements was too much for everyone's eyes to take in, and they all cried out in delight. However, a cold sweat flowed down Wade's cheek. As a top expert, he could naturally feel whether he hit the target or not. The enemy in his hand didn't seem to be quite right. Bang! With a muffled sound, Wang Yu and Wade's hand suddenly burst open. Sure enough, it was a doppelganger. Seeing this scene, Wade's face immediately showed a shocked expression. You're pretty good. I was almost hit by you. At the same time, Wang Yu's voice sounded in front of Wade. He can dodge this? Seeing Wang Yu use a doppelganger to dodge Wade's combo, the eyes of all the pro experts in the audience almost flew out. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. As old opponents of many years, everyone had studied Wade thoroughly. The reason why Wade was called Spider-Man was because Wade had mastered the silver thread technique to perfection, and the silver thread lotus flower just now was Wade's famous consummate skill. Silver thread flash appeared behind him, flying swallow kick followed by lotus flower. This set of skills was perfectly linked together, and there were no openings at all. None of the people present dared to pat their chest and guarantee that they would be able to dodge this move. But at this moment, Wang Yu not only blocked it, but also dodged it. This was simply unbelievable. In the eyes of ordinary players, Wang Yu might have just used a fake body to trick this set of skills, but in the eyes of top experts, it was a completely different scene. Originally, the appearance of evildoers run wild in the second round was already stunning enough. Everyone in the audience basically regarded evildoers run wild as the most difficult imaginary opponent in this tournament. But after Wang Yu used that doppelganger to trick Wade's combo, everyone discovered that even the strong evildoers run wild seemed to be a little brother in front of this guy. But at this time, Wang Yu's words were not flattering. Wade's combo just now was really quite good. If it weren't for the fact that Wang Yu's many years of martial arts training had allowed his reaction to far exceed that of ordinary people, and the instant the silver thread flew towards his face, Wang Yu judged from the angle of attack that the opponent's skill wasn't going to attack him head-on, Wang Yu would have been hit by this set of combo just now. Wang Yu had played the game for so long, and he had always been untouchable. Even when facing enemies hundreds or even thousands of times his own, he was rarely hit. Wade, on the other hand, had almost hit Wang Yu, showing just how high his strength was. Without the assistance of stealth, it's still a bit difficult. Looking at the lively and unharmed Wang Yu in front of him, Wade couldn't help but sigh. As an assassin, most of Wade's explosive skills had to be coordinated with stealth to be close to perfection, and this silver thread lotus was even more so. If it was a sneak attack from behind, Wade thought he could do it without a trace and not be predicted in advance by the opponent. What Wade didn't know, however, was that the untraceable in his eyes was only for ordinary people. For Wang Yu, an attack from behind was easier to guard against. After all, the mentality of the attacker would be very different when he was in stealth and when he wasn't. If Wade had sneaked up on him just now, he certainly wouldn't have made a feint. In this way, it would have been easier for Wang Yu, who knew Wade's real intentions from the beginning, to avoid it. Of course, an ordinary person like Wade wouldn't understand this. In Wade's mind, his failure just now was entirely attributed to not using it while he was in stealth. At this time, Wade's stealth was on cooldown, and he couldn't be invisible, so he could only create conditional stealth. Since you can see through stealth, I wonder if you can also see through this move. With that, Wade's eyes tightened, and he pulled out a white ball-shaped object and threw it to the ground. Bang! The white ball smashed into the ground, and suddenly a purple smoke rose, enveloping Wang Yu and Wade. Smoke bomb. One of the assassin's basic skills. Release smoke bomb to block the opponent's vision for a short time. Compared to stealth, which could be invisible for a long time, smoke bomb's control effect wasn't too strong. Most assassins usually used this move as an escape skill. Who would have thought that Wade would actually use this skill in battle? As expected of a top expert, the use of professional skills was no longer restricted to the form, reaching a realm where he could casually use them. The smoke bomb rose, and Wade rushed at Wang Yu again under the cover of the smoke with his dagger in both hands. Who knew that at this moment, Wang Yu grabbed behind him with his right hand without looking back. Wang Yu was a burly man with long hands and feet. Before Wade's dagger could stab him, his fan-like hand had already grabbed Wade's wrist. "Come here." Immediately after, Wang Yu used Ferocious Tiger Strike and pulled forward. Wade, who was behind him, suddenly lost control of his body and was pulled in front of him by Wang Yu. A top-tier expert like Wade was naturally in manual mode. In manual mode, players were in charge of their own actions. Wade's dagger had missed, so he was in a temporary state of weightlessness. With Wang Yu's pull, Wade lost his balance and fell face first to the ground. Hee. Wade was beaten to the ground. In fact, Wang Yu could end the battle with a kick, but Wang Yu had been instructed by Wuji before he went on stage to beat his opponent to the point of mental collapse, so Wang Yu didn't rush up to stab his opponent. Instead, he stood where he was and continued to laugh. "It seems that your strength is still not enough." Chapter 1872. This guy, seeing that Wang Yu didn't chase after him, and instead taunted him with an indifferent expression, the audience couldn't help but be stunned. At this moment, even a fool could see that Wade and Wang Yu weren't on the same level. Wang Yu was now playing with Wade like a cat playing with a mouse. It should be known that the difference in strength between top experts wasn't too big. The experts of the major teams present were all arrogant people, but unless their professions were completely restrained, no one dared to say that they could win. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any suspense in this match. But Wang Yu showed a completely overwhelming advantage in front of Wade. As an agile profession, the assassin's technique and maneuverability were the highest among all professions. An expert like Wade represented not only the pinnacle of assassins, but also the limit of maneuverability in the entire game of Rebirth. But now, facing a weak fighter profession, Wade was being beaten the entire time. This was something that no one dared to imagine. The mentality of the freelance team players had already collapsed. Now that they saw Wang Yu playing with Wade in the ring, their mood could be imagined. Wade naturally wasn't a fool. Although being beaten to the ground by Wang Yu wasn't as terrifying as the previous few rounds, it was still very embarrassing for an expert. But hearing Wang Yu's provocation, Wade immediately calmed down. After a few rounds, Wade also felt Wang Yu's unfathomable strength, and at the same time realized Wang Yu's true intentions. In the face of absolute suppression, Wade felt powerless. There was absolutely no point in continuing like this. He could only be trampled like a mouse. There was a saying in China, a warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. If he killed his opponent directly, his opponent would at most receive physical damage. However, if Wang Yu toyed with his opponent like this, he would be inflicting mental damage on his opponent. Wade was the captain of the freelance team. If this went on, not only would the team's morale plummet, but Wade's position as the captain would also fall into the abyss in the hearts of the team members. You win. I admit defeat. Wade was also a decisive person. After realizing this, Wade simply gave up resistance and raised his hand to surrender. In the fourth round, the motley crew won. At this point in the competition, the first match was nearing its end. The motley crew was currently using overwhelming strength to leave their opponents far behind with a score of 3-0. Looking at the results on the stage, the members of the freelance battle team felt a sense of helplessness. As top-notch experts, everyone was extremely confident in their own abilities. Before coming to the competition, the independent teams had already thought of countless possibilities. They had even imagined themselves defeating Pantheon to become the world champions. However, they never expected the reality to be so heart-wrenching. Let alone fighting against other top teams, at this moment, an amateur team was pressing their own team to the ground. The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. Everyone in the free battle team felt like a phoenix that had been defeated by a rooster. From the inside to the outside, from top to bottom, they started to doubt their lives. For the fifth round, the free team didn't know who to send up. How the hell were they going to fight? They would either die tragically or be played like a mouse. The best outcome was to run around on the stage and embarrass themselves. Such a competition had no gaming experience at all. However, just as the free battle team was wondering who to send up for the fifth round, the captain of the motley crew, Wang Yu, suddenly stood up and said loudly, "We, the motley crew, are here to become the world champions. It's an honor for a third-rate team like you to compete with us. However, for the sake of the friendship between the two countries, we don't want your results to be too ugly, so we've specially given you a handicap. We'll forfeit the last round." Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone in the free battle team was stunned. The audience in the arena almost choked to death. Damn, why does this sound so familiar? Nonsense, how can it not sound familiar? In the knockout round against the Alilang team, the motley crew only gave them a handicap. Even their captain's words were copied and pasted by the author. A handicap? So arrogant? Exactly. These guys are so arrogant. Otherwise, how would they dare say that they're here to win the world championship? Not only were the audience surprised, but the major battle teams in the audience were also dumbfounded by the motley crew's behavior. Especially the Chinese team, 9 states, they didn't know how to express their feelings. Damn, it can't be. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was dumbfounded. This group of frivolous guys is giving them a handicap again. Do they really think that it's so easy to survive in the International Professional League? No, it's not. Hearing 3 Mountains 5 Peaks words, 5 Lakes 4 Seas shook his head and said, Wu Ji is an extremely shrewd guy. They're not doing this because they look down on the other battle teams. On the contrary, they think highly of the other battle teams. What do you mean? 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was still puzzled. They've already given them a handicap. What do they think highly of? What else? 5 Lakes 4 Seas raised his eyebrows and said, Do they still have any experts they can send out? Hearing 5 Lakes 4 Seas words, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was instantly speechless. The other battle teams had never fought against a motley crew before, so they naturally didn't know the strength of a motley crew. However, 9 states had fought head-on against a motley crew before, so they naturally had a more thorough understanding of a motley crew. Logically speaking, although a motley crew was strong and far superior to normal players, their strength level was only so-so in the eyes of top-tier experts. In short, there were only 4 players that could make these top-tier experts of 9 states afraid. Other than Wang Yu and the other 2 unfathomable experts, the other one was the sinister and cunning Wu Ji. However, although Wu Ji was sinister, his strength could only be displayed in the team competition. In the individual competition, Wu Ji's sinister effect was still very limited. Therefore, the only experts that a motley crew could truly protect were Wang Yu, Evildoers Run Wild, and Yang Na. At this time, the 3 of them had already gone out. Comparatively speaking, the remaining people were really a motley crew. So what if they didn't give them a handicap in the 5th round? Wouldn't they still lose a round? Rather than being defeated, it was better to pretend to be magnanimous and deliberately give them a handicap. This way, not only could they bluff and put pressure on their opponents, but they could also cover up the weakness and shortcomings of a motley crew that had few experts. I really didn't expect this. After understanding this point, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks sighed again. This group of people is actually so sinister. Of course. 5 Lakes 4 Seas looked at Wu Ji meaningfully and said, This person's strategy and that Iron Ox's strength, this year's competition will be even more exciting than expected. Chapter 1873. The first match ended and there was an intermission. Those who needed to drink water drank water, and those who needed to go to the toilet went to the toilet. In the lounge of the free team, everyone sat in their seats with gloomy expressions. The entire lounge exuded a gloomy atmosphere. How should we play the next match? Wade asked everyone carefully. At this time, Wade did not dare to act arbitrarily anymore. He began to ask for the opinions of others. After all, the result of the first match was so terrible. If the second match continued like this, there was no need to fight the match anymore. They could just admit defeat. What's more, acting arbitrarily was a scapegoat. Everyone gave their opinions, and if there was a mistake, everyone would bear the consequences together. How else can we play? Invisible Man heard this and said, The second match is random. Our tactical arrangements won't work. Our only advantage is choosing the map. That's right. Wade nodded and said, Then which map should we choose for the second match? The bigger the better, of course. As soon as Wade finished speaking, Wolf raised his hand and replied, At least if we can't beat them, we can still run. Makes sense, makes sense. Invisible Man nodded in agreement. It seemed that these 2 people were really afraid of Evildoers Run Wild and Yang Na. They wanted to run away before they even fought. Bullsh *T. Before Wade could speak, Gospel on the side disdainfully said, If the opponent can't beat us and runs away, can we catch up? In the battle just now, Gospel suffered a loss because of his short leg. He had a deep grudge against the escape style of play. Speaking up to this point, Gospel said, "We should choose the smallest map for the second match. At least we don't have to worry about the opponent running away." Yo! Hearing Gospel's words, Wolf mocked sarcastically, "You're saying it like you can catch up to someone who runs away in the arena." Gospel was not to be outdone. "You're saying it like you won't be pressed to the ground by others if the map is bigger." It was said that top experts all had bad tempers. As soon as Gospel said this, Wolf immediately became angry. He pointed at Gospel and shouted, "Say that again." "So what if I said it?" Gospel was still disdainful. "It's not like I asked others to press you to the ground and rub you on it. Don't tell me you want to hit me when you can't beat them? You're really promising." All right. Stop arguing." Seeing that the two were about to escalate from a verbal fight to a physical one, Wade hurriedly stopped them and said, "Now that we're fighting like this, you two are still causing trouble for us? Are you tired of living? Then what do you suggest we do?" Worf and Gospel turned around at the same time and glared at Wade. "Just listen to the Gospel." Wade pointed to the Gospel and said, "Choose the small map for the map." "Why?" Worf and the Invisible Man clearly did not understand Wade's decision. Wade explained, "Because the opponent's strength is different from what we imagined. In the minds of ordinary players, an expert's teammate would definitely be an expert as well. Even if there was a gap between them, the gap wouldn't be too big. However, the Motley team was completely different. There were some people in this team who weren't as strong as they had imagined, but there were others who were stronger than they had imagined. As strong as Wang Yu and the others were, their strength was enough to crush top-tier professional players. However, apart from Wang Yu and the others, the strength of the others was only at the level of ordinary professional players. The gap was unimaginable. The escape style of play was the Motley team's usual method of playing. After all, their strength was low, and they wouldn't be at a disadvantage if they exchanged one for one with their opponent. In this regard, the independent team and the Motley team couldn't compare. It wasn't just in terms of professionalism in escaping. More importantly, the independent team was a top-tier professional team. It would be too undignified to put down their pride and use such a despicable move. Moreover, if they really encountered experts like Wang Yu and evildoers run wild, it would be a serious problem for the independent team to escape. Therefore, it was unrealistic for the independent team to choose a large map and use the escape style of play. On the contrary, if they used a small map, they could restrict the Motley team's performance. At the end of the day, the Motley team was more than half weak. If they used a small map, the independent team's chances of winning would naturally be higher. Wade was a thoughtful person. He definitely wanted to maximize his chances of winning. Wolf and the others weren't fools. Everyone immediately understood Wade's words. Although they were still a little unwilling, they didn't say anything, tacitly agreeing to Wade's decision. The independent team seemed to be panicking, but they actually knew what was going on. The Motley team looked very calm, but they were panicking right now. It couldn't be helped. In the past, the Motley team was the least confident in winning the second match. There was no other reason. The second match was completely random. If they had the home advantage, they could choose a map that was advantageous to them. Now, they didn't even have the right to choose a map. The second match was completely up to fate. Leaving one's fate to fate was a simple thing to say. However, in a battle between two teams, the weaker one was, the more taboo it was. Because of the difference in strength, they weren't confident, and they were at the mercy of others. In such a situation, the Motley team's mentality was obvious. The Motley team's members were naturally aware of their own strength. In a sense, a group of people relied on 3 people to carry them. 4 kings might not even be able to carry 1 bronze, and it was even more difficult for 3 kings to carry 7 bronze players. Now that the timing, geographical, and human conditions were out of their control, the motley team's members were naturally afraid. After all, the total score of the second match was double that of the first match. It would be fine if Wang Yu and the others were randomly selected. Even if they could not defeat their opponents, they would at least be able to win a few rounds and not pull the score too far apart. However, if Wang Yu and the others were not randomly selected, their previous score advantage would probably be surpassed by others in this round. In terms of proportion, the probability of not randomly picking Wang Yu and the others was still very high. Everyone, just do your best. Faced with such a situation, even Wuji could only helplessly say, try to take as much of the opponent's HP as possible. Can't we run? Mingdu asked doubtfully. We can't run. Wuji said, the opponent isn't an idiot. They know that you can run and still choose a large map. In this match, there's a 50% chance that they will choose a small map. What about the remaining 50%? Mingdu continued to ask. The remaining 50%? Wuji smiled and said, the remaining 50% is very likely that they won't even change the map. They will still use the arena map like the first match. P.S. Today's move was tiring. Only one chapter left. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version's fastest updated website, M. Chapter 1874. The 10-minute break quickly ended. Both sides returned to the arena. Just as Wuji expected, the free team didn't choose a large map for the second round. Instead, they chose the same map as the first round, the arena. Seeing that the independent team had chosen the arena for their second match, the audience was shocked. What's going on? Hasn't the free team been beaten up enough? Why did they choose this map? However, the pro players sighed. As expected of the free team, they didn't collapse after the first round, and they found a way to deal with the second round so quickly. Everyone knew that the motley team was good at guerrilla warfare. If they could win, they would fight. If they couldn't, they would play hide and seek. This arena was a great counter to the motley team. The second round didn't have any tactic. It was all about luck and strength. After entering the arena, the motley team started praying. Death is better than death. Go to the side opposite Old Cow, and your whole family will die. As everyone prayed, 2 beams of light landed on the free team and the motley team. Then, they started flashing back and forth. A few seconds later, the beams of light stopped. The 2 beams of light landed on the free team and Mingjian Daoxue. F***CK, F***CK, F***CK. Seeing that he was the first to be chosen, Mingjian Daoxue cursed. The other members of the motley team couldn't help but cover their faces. F***CK. It seemed that even the system couldn't stand the shamelessness of the motley team. It played a big joke on the motley team in the first round. In terms of strength, Mingjian Daoxue was the weakest member of the ragtag team. All of his abilities came from his equipment. The chances of him randomly picking Mingjian Daoxue and Wang Yu were the same. If this was the early stages of the game, Mingjian Daoxue's equipment would be invincible. But in this day and age, it was getting harder and harder to upgrade equipment. Most players' equipment was also slowly improving. Mingjian Daoxue no longer had that overwhelming advantage. Moreover, everyone present was a top-tier pro player. They had tens of thousands of players behind them to gather equipment and resources. In terms of equipment, they naturally wouldn't be any worse than Mingjian Daoxue. Now that Mingjian Daoxue was chosen, he was basically going to die. Bosses, don't laugh at me if I lose. Famous sword Dao Xue naturally knew just how far away he was from being compared to a top-class expert. Before even entering the arena, he was already prepared to lose. Go go! When they saw that Mingjian Daoxue had been chosen, the other members of the Motley Bunch battle team felt sad for him. They all expressed their sympathy for Mingjian Daoxue. The difference in strength was simply too great. Let alone Mingjian Daoxue, as long as his opponents weren't Wang Yu and evildoers run wild, there wasn't much of a difference between them. The only difference was who could deal more damage to their opponent. In such a situation, it was hard to tell who would be the next to appear. Naturally, no one would take pleasure in Ming Jian Daoshue's misfortune. With a flash of light, Ming Jian Daoshue and Worf were teleported to the arena. Worf was definitely a top-class player. The reason why he had lost so badly in the first match was because he had encountered a non-human like evildoers run wild, so his loss was rather undeserved. Right now, Worf had the absolute advantage against Ming Jian Daoshue. Of course, Ming Jian Daoshue knew that he was no match for the person before him. Hence, he didn't try to fight his opponent head-on. Instead, he decided to rely on his advantage in speed and stealth to deal with his opponent. As long as he could trade his opponent for his opponent, he would win. Thus, when the match began, Ming Jian Daoshue did not say anything else. Instead, he activated stealth. With a flash, Ming Jian Daoshue's figure disappeared into thin air. However, the instant Ming Jian Daoshue entered stealth, Worf raised his longsword and sent a battle energy slash flying at Ming Jian Daoshue. Just as Ming Jian Daoshue entered stealth, the battle energy slash accurately struck him. Although the battle energy slash's priority wasn't enough to interrupt Ming Jian Daoshue's stealth, it still caused the stealthed Ming Jian Daoshue to sway slightly. The HP bar above his head fell by nearly 1/10. Ming Jian Daoshue was horrified when he saw this. He immediately turned around and ran. If it were anyone else, Ming Jian Daoshue, who was a thief with high movement speed and stealth, could easily escape. However, Ming Jian Daoshue's opponent was no ordinary person. He was a world-class expert. In a battle between experts of this level, only one opening was needed to determine the outcome of the battle. Worf had absolute confidence in his own skills. The moment he sent out the battle energy slash, Worf lowered his head and charged at Ming Jian Daoshue. Ming Jian Daoshue was only stunned for a moment by the battle energy slash, but Worf had already followed the battle energy slash and arrived in front of Ming Jian Daoshue. Bam! A muffled sound rang out. Before Ming Jian Daoshue could understand what was going on, Worf's charge slammed into his back. Ming Jian Daoshue's figure was instantly revealed as he was sent flying. Ming Jian Daoshue's greatest advantage was his stealth. Now that Worf had interrupted his stealth, Ming Jian Daoshue panicked. After Worf hit Ming Jian Daoshue, he calmly stepped forward and stabbed his sword into Ming Jian Daoshue's waist. Without waiting for the skill to stun, Worf grabbed the sword's hilt with both hands and raised it up. He used Rising Dragon Slash and sent Ming Jian Daoshue flying with a single strike. Being knocked into the air basically meant losing the right to fight. Ming Jian Daoshue naturally wasn't the kind of person who would sit and wait for death. He hurriedly twisted his body in an attempt to quick recover and land. However, Worf seemed to have expected this. After using Rising Dragon Slash, he slammed his greatsword into the ground and used Collapsing Mountain. Before Ming Jian Daoshue could land, he was knocked into the air a second time. After being knocked into the air a second time, Ming Jian Daoshue completely lost the ability to fight back. Breaking Army Rising Dragon Slash, Fierce Dragon Slash, Collapsing Mountain and Splitting Earth Slash. A series of frightening skills were used consecutively, sending Ming Jian Daoshue flying into the air. The damage output of a weapon warrior was only slightly lower than that of an assassin. Even so, it was still one of the top classes. Ming Jian Daoshue was just a fragile thief. There was no way he could withstand Worf's series of skills. While Worf was still in the middle of his combo, Ming Jian Daoshue transformed into a beam of white light and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The audience was dumbfounded by what they saw. As expected, experts needed to be compared. Although Worf couldn't fight back at all against evildoers run wild, he had fully displayed the strength of a top-tier expert. Even the ragtag bunch didn't expect Ming Jian Daoshue to be knocked out of the arena by a single combo without even touching his opponent. As expected of a world-class expert, His strength wasn't just for show. Chapter 1875. The people from the Quanjin sect were also a bunch of sarcastic people. Although Ming Jian Daoxue had said that no one was allowed to mock him after losing, when they saw that Ming Jian Daoxue had been knocked off the stage in a single exchange, the group of people still couldn't help but jeer. "Daoxue, you won't be able to marry such a beautiful wife. Ck off." Ming Jian Daoxue was exasperated. He could only use one word to express his current feelings. What the hell are these people doing? They don't have anything to do every day, so they start to quarrel with each other. At this moment, the biggest reaction came from the Free Battle team. Up until this point in the match, the Free Battle team had won a match for the first time. Due to their previous losses, the Freelance Battle team's mood was extremely gloomy. This sudden victory was like a ray of light in the darkness, giving them a glimmer of hope. It seemed like their opponents weren't just a bunch of undefeatable people. Just as both sides were still reminiscing about the previous battle, the pillar of light once again landed on the ragtag team. Then, it began to shake again. After a few seconds, the pillar of light stopped. Everyone looked over and saw Bao San slowly stand up. With a flash of light, Bao San was teleported into the arena. The second match was a warrior against a warrior. Players had to fight until they lost. Logically speaking, Worf, who had already fought a match, should be at a disadvantage. However, Ming Jian Daoxue was a little embarrassed. He was knocked out of the arena before he could even touch his opponent. Worf was still in full condition. Facing a top-tier expert in full condition, Bao San felt a little pressured. A warrior. After winning the first match, Worf regained his confidence. When he saw that his opponent was also a warrior, he couldn't help but purse his lips. As an expert warrior, Worf naturally knew the warrior class like the back of his hand. If his opponent was another class, Worf might have paid more attention. However, his opponent was a warrior that he was most familiar with, so Worf naturally felt disdain. Was there anyone more professional than him in the warrior class? The countdown ended. As usual, Worf used Combat Aura Slash. A beam of Combat Aura shot at Bao San. At the same time, Worf followed up with Charge. Although it was an old-fashioned move, it was very useful. When the Dochi Slash feigned an attack, the opponent's only choice was to dodge, block, or take the attack head-on. No matter what the outcome was, an opening would be exposed in an instant. When Worf charged at him, his opponent would not be able to dodge. Being caught by a top-notch expert and gaining the upper hand, the result was no different from Ming Jian Daoxue. However, Bao San was not a pushover. Worf had already used this move twice. Although he did not manage to unleash his full power against evildoers run wild the first time, he beat famous Blade Du Shui up quite badly the second time. Of course, Bao San knew what Worf was trying to do at this moment. He had learned from the mistakes of the past. Therefore, the moment Worf threw out his Combat Aura Slash, Bao San took a step back, swung his greatsword, and released the same Combat Aura Slash. Then, he followed up with a Collision Aura Slash. Bang! When Worf's Aura Slash was a few meters away from Bao San, it collided with Bao San's Aura Slash and exploded. Worf was right behind him, and he saw Bao San charging at him. Copying me? Worf could not help but smile when he saw Bao San copying him. He cancelled Collision Aura, swung his greatsword, and activated Whirlwind Slash. Although Whirlwind Slash's priority was not as high as Collision Aura, it had a special characteristic. Before the skill started spinning, it could be interrupted. However, once the skill started spinning, all control skills, including knockback and stun skills, could not be interrupted. Collision Aura was no exception. Just as Bao San was about to be killed by Worf's Whirlwind Slash, Bao San cancelled Charge and used Triple Slash. Bao San appeared above Worf in a flash, gripped the hilt of his greatsword with both hands, and used Collapsing Earth Slash with the blade facing down. Wang Yu had taught the members of Chuanjin a long time ago about the weaknesses of the various classes' skills in Rebirth. As a warrior, Bao San had memorized the weaknesses of warrior skills. Although Whirlwind Slash was a near-perfect skill that could be used in the later stages of the game, it had two weaknesses. First, it was unstable. Once the opponent started spinning, all he had to do was attack the opponent's lower body with a long weapon to break it. Second, it was the opponent's head. When Whirlwind Slash was activated, both of his hands would be casting skills. Since he could not use an anti-air skill like Rising Dragon Slash, the opponent's head would be exposed. All he had to do was jump up and use an anti-air skill to break the opponent's head. Attacking the opponent's lower body sounded simple, but it was difficult to do so unless one was a super expert like Wang Yu. Therefore, Bao San chose the second method, which was to attack from above. Worf was shocked when he saw his opponent suddenly appearing above him and smashing down with the collapsing mountain slash. However, it was too late for him to use an anti-air skill after activating Whirlwind Slash. Worf cancelled Whirlwind Slash, rolled on the ground, and evaded Bao San's attack. Boom! Bao San landed on the ground. Bao San's skill created a huge crater on the ground. Collapsing Mountain was an AoE skill. Although Worf's head was not directly hit by Bao San's weapon, he was still affected by the skill and was sent flying by the powerful impact. Being knocked flying and being knocked into the air had almost the same effect. The only difference was that being knocked into the air could not be recovered. Because of that, only advanced skills could knock someone into the air, while normal skills could only knock them into the air. Since being knocked into the air could not be recovered, Worf had lost control of his body. Before Worf could fall from the air, Bao San, who was crouching on the ground, pulled his greatsword from the ground and used Rising Dragon Slash to fling Worf into the air. Being knocked into the air would result in being knocked into the air. Now that Worf was knocked into the air, the knock-up effect would be upgraded to a knockback. Worf was flung into the air, and his body was full of openings. Fierce Dragon Slash. Breaking Army Rising Dragon Slash. Breaking Waves Soaring Slash. Bao San followed up with an ultimate skill, and Worf was instantly engulfed by the sword light. Infinite Combo was a necessary skill for an expert. Although Bao San was not a top-tier expert like Worf, this kind of combo was still a piece of cake for him. A chain attack in the air, followed by another chain attack in the air, followed by another chain attack, followed by another chain attack, followed by another chain attack in the air. Bao San swung his greatsword at Worf, and it was impossible for Worf to land on the ground. It was only a matter of time before he was killed by Bao San's combo. Chapter 1876. The reason why experts were referred to as experts was because not only were expert players powerful in terms of mechanical control, but they were also capable of improvising. Even if they were at a disadvantage, they could calmly analyze the advantages and disadvantages between themselves and their opponents and find a way to deal with the situation. As a top-tier expert, Worf was no exception. Although Worf could not retaliate after being hit by Bao San's combo, he did not panic in the slightest. After reaching level 40 in Rebirth, every class would have a dispel skill that could remove crowd control. Weapon warriors were no exception. However, dispel only lasted for an instant, and players had to find the right time to use it. Otherwise, the skill would be wasted. If Worf had only been fainted, he could have used Dispel to disengage the swordsman's control and counterattack. However, Bao San knew this, and the moment he controlled Worf, he launched a flurry of attack. Even if Worf used Dispel, Bao San's subsequent attacks would still stun him. Of course, if Worf died from the combo, he would no longer be a top-tier expert. When Bao San finished his combo and lost control of his normal attacks, Worf roared and activated the warrior's Dispel skill, Inspire. The crowd control on him was instantly removed, and Worf, who had been flying uncontrollably in the air, twisted his body, regained his balance, and steadily landed on the ground. He's trying to break free? That's too much. The audience clenched their fists when they saw this scene. It was common knowledge that when a player was hit by a combo, the effects of dispel would be minimal. They did not expect a top-tier expert to forcefully break free from the crowd control. Bao San had long since been prepared for Worf's dispel. Seeing Worf activate Inspire, Bao San turned his sword and stabbed at Worf. However, Worf, who was still in the air, blocked the attack with his sword. Clang! With a clang of metal, Worf's sword blocked Bao San's sudden thrust. Huh! Bao San was slightly taken aback when he saw that his attack was blocked by Worfgar. Worf did not have a flying skill, and players needed to control their body and adjust their balance during quick recover. Yet, Worf had accurately blocked his attack. His mechanics were truly amazing. Aya! Not only was Bao San surprised, but even Wang Yu, who was below the stage, felt his eyes light up. Wang Yu was confident that he could block accurately in a weightless state as well, but Wang Yu had trained his skills for more than 20 years since he was young. On the other hand, Worf was just a professional gamer. Rebirth had only been released for a year, but he was able to do it. His control over his body must have reached an unimaginable level. Of course, even though Bao San's attack didn't hit Worf, Worf was also drenched in cold sweat. That was close. Fortunately, he had a forceful block skill. Otherwise, if he had been hit by the abrupt stab, he would have been controlled again. As the saying went, strength came from the ground. When players were in the air, they were powerless. Worf, who had yet to land, was sent flying by Bao San's attack. Worf used the momentum to quick recover in midair, and landed steadily on the ground. Ta! However, the moment Worf landed on the ground, he heard soft footsteps behind him. At the same time, Bao San used triple slash and appeared behind Worf like a ghost. He gripped his greatsword with both hands and swung it at Worf from top to bottom. In the blink of an eye, Worf hurriedly put his weapon behind his back and used Su Qin sheathed sword. Clang! Bao San's greatsword was once again blocked by Worf. At the same time, Worf leaped forward and used roll to offset most of the force. He used the impact of Bao San's attack to roll forward and widen the distance between him and Bao San. At this time, Bao San's collide skill had also finished its cooldown. He lowered his head and leaned forward to ram into Worf. Worf turned around, held the two ends of his longsword in each hand, and pushed it forward. Duong! Bao San's head collided with Worf's sword. Worf was pushed back a few steps by the powerful impact before he could stabilize himself. However, Worf had a smile on his face and said, "Your skill rhythm is messed up." When he heard Worf's words, Bao San's pupils shrank and his heart skipped a beat. After using a set of ultimate skills, most of Bao San's damage output skills were on cooldown. In order to prevent Worf from successfully using quick recover, Bao San used stab and triple slash, which had just come off cooldown. However, a stab was used to follow up with a collide combo. Right now, both of Bao San's displacement skills were on cooldown. Although the collide hit Worf, Bao San's skill rhythm was disrupted by Worf, so he could no longer follow up with a combo. "You're the first person to use my fighting style to beat me up like this. You're already very good as an amateur." Worf praised Bao San, then lowered his head and said, "But now, it's time for me to teach you what a real warrior is." Worf then stomped his feet on the ground and rushed towards Bao San. The two were only 2 to 3 meters apart. Bao San's collide skill had just been used, and he was still in a stunned state. It was too late for him to dodge Worf's collide. Duong! Bao San was sent flying by Worf's collide. Almost at the same time, Worf used stab and dashed towards Bao San. Rising Dragon Slash, knock up. He landed on the ground and used Collapsing Mountain, double knock up, Breaking Dragon Slash, triple knock up, Dragon Slash, Aerial Pursuit. As one of the strongest players in the weapon battle, Worf had a deep understanding of the warrior class. His control over his combo skills had reached an unstoppable level. His combo skills were much more skillful than Bao-San's. In terms of skills, Worf's combo was no different from Bao-San's combo. However, Worf's combo was much more natural and smooth. Worf's skill combinations were flawless. He had reached the realm of perfection that all warriors dreamed of. Bao-San was far weaker than Worf to begin with. Although Bao-San still had disperse, Bao-San was unable to find an opening in Worf's combo and turned into a streak of white light. The second round was won by the independent team. Worf completed a 1v2 and showed everyone the true strength of a top-tier expert. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version. Chapter 1877. In the time it took for me to walk the dog, my daughter locked the door from the inside. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1878. Did you see the difference? Seeing that third Bao was also knocked out of the ring, Wuji turned around and asked the crowd calmly. Yes, I saw it. The Chuanjin members nodded one after another. Frankly speaking, even though everyone knew that they were no match for a top-tier expert, they still held a sliver of hope in their hearts. After all, in terms of skills and attributes, Chuanjin's team was already close to their limit. Therefore, everyone instinctively thought that even if a top-tier expert was stronger than them, they would not necessarily be that much stronger. One must know that during the elimination rounds, the Ragtag team had defeated the Arilang team with tactic. Therefore, everyone subconsciously thought that they were not that far off from a top-tier expert. As long as they used their tactics well, it was not impossible for them to win. In particular, in the first match, Worf was pinned to the ground by evildoers Run Wild, which made everyone feel that Worf was weaker. What they didn't know was that although the Arilang battle team was also a first-class team, it was only relatively speaking. In a world-class competition, even strong teams like the 9 Regions battle team and the BTR battle team didn't dare to say that they could enter the top 3, let alone the Arilang battle team. The reason why Worf lost the first match was entirely because his opponent was a stronger expert, Evildoers Run Wild. It was a mistake to replace Evildoers Run Wild with himself. Now that Worf had won 2 consecutive matches with his overwhelming strength, the Ragtag team had a fundamental understanding of the strength of a top-tier professional expert. Sure enough, the pursuit of extreme control was the path of a true expert. Unorthodox methods could only be used to win by surprise. It was no wonder that the so-called tactics were eliminated in top-tier competitions. In comparison, tactics were ultimately the last resort of players whose skills were inferior to theirs. Am I seeing things? The members of the freestyle team were in disbelief when they saw Worf defeat 2 Ragtag team opponents in a row. After all, the morale of the freestyle team had been completely destroyed by the Ragtag team in the first match. Although everyone knew that the members of the Ragtag team were weaker than Wang Yu's team, they did not expect them to be that weak. Birds of a feather flocked together. Since the 3 experts in the first match were so strong, their teammates would not be weak no matter how weak they were. Their performance in the second match was somewhat unexpected. You're not mistaken. Wade smiled. This is their true strength. Amateurs are, after all, amateurs. In such an uncontrollable situation, they've exposed their weaknesses. Are you acting? At this moment, the most incredulous ones were the spectators in the stands. From the first match, the Ragtag team seemed to have won this round for sure. Who would have thought that they would lose the second match in such a manner? Every time there was a competition, there would be people opening bet. Whether it was the World Cup or the Esports Professional League, betting had become an unwritten rule. As the saying goes, bets turn into bets. The villa was by the sea. The Ragtag Bunch Battle Team was an unpopular team in this competition. Although not many people thought highly of them, there was still a small group of opportunists who bet money on them. In the first match, those who bet money on the Ragtag Bunch Battle Team were already fantasizing about the pinnacle of a young model's life. But the Ragtag Bunch Battle Team's performance in the second match was a fierce slap to the face. The cruelest thing in life was to have one's dreams destroyed and trampled on by others just as they were about to reach them. The miserable state of the motley crew, coupled with the fact that the motley crew had pretended to be arrogant in the previous match, had already incurred the wrath of the masses. "Damn, you've been struck by lightning for showing off. Give me back my hard-earned money." Under the angry curses of the crowd, the venue darkened once more. After the light beam flashed, it stopped on Baimingyu. Seeing that she had been chosen, Baimingyu was a little confused. She had already gone up in the first match, and now she was chosen again in the second match. Her luck was out of this world. The scum of the Ragtag Bunch Battle Team did not forget to encourage her. "Do your best. The opponent doesn't have much health left. Even if you can't kill him, you can still replace him." Hearing this, Baimingyu's face darkened. She might as well not have said it. With a flash of light, Baimingyu was teleported to the arena. Worf was also a weapon warrior, and he mainly added points to agility. Although warriors could wear heavy armor and had high health growth, Worf's health had been halved after taking a set of powerful skills from Bao 3. Assassins were a class that focused on burst damage. In the game, they were a little weak in PvE, but they had almost no natural enemies in PvP. Tanks with high health and defense had a slight advantage, but only a little. At the end of the day, if an assassin wanted to kite a tank in the arena, the tank would not be able to do anything. As for vulnerable classes, they were basically lambs waiting to be slaughtered in front of an assassin. A full HP Baimingyu versus a low HP weapon warrior. In terms of class and stats, she had the advantage. Baimingyu activated stealth as soon as the match began. Worf, on the other hand, didn't attack her with Aura Slash. Instead, he took a few steps back and leaned his back against the edge of the ring. In terms of mentality, Worf was indeed worthy of the title of an expert. Even though it was a 1v2, Worf had no intention of underestimating his opponent. Now that Worf knew that he was low on health, he naturally chose a safer strategy. "This guy is quite cautious." Seeing that her opponent had hidden his back, Baimingyu mumbled to herself. She then removed stealth. What's he trying to do? Everyone was dumbfounded by Baimingyu's actions. Even Worf did not know what she was thinking. Stealth was the signature skill of an assassin, and it was the most crucial part of an assassin's combat style. At least 8 out of 10 assassin skills revolved around the use of the core stealth skill. Without stealth, an assassin would lose at least half of their combat strength. This was also why tanks were the bane of assassins. Assassin players would usually raise their stealth to the highest level. The stealth skill, which allowed players to come and go without a trace, was one of the most troublesome skills for players. In fact, to prevent assassins from using the stealth skill as a trick, the tournament had even specially modified the skill. In the arena, the duration of an assassin's stealth was reduced to 180 seconds, but the cooldown was extended to 60 seconds. In this kind of situation, assassins should treasure their stealth ability even more, but Dark North Fish had cancelled her stealth ability. This kind of inconceivable action was simply incomprehensible. Could it be that this brat was going to admit defeat? Chapter 1879. Just as everyone was wondering what Baimingyu was trying to do, Baimingyu raised her dagger and made a provocative gesture at Worf. Her intention was obvious. "Come on, fight me head-on. Daddy doesn't need to go into stealth." Whoa. The audience's emotions were immediately stirred when they saw this scene. Crank. Worf was stunned when he saw Baimingyu's actions. He felt every cell in his body tremble. Arrogance. What was arrogance? This was it. Stealth was an assassin's most important skill. The assassin in front of him had actually given up on stealth and wanted to fight him head-on. This showed how arrogant he was. He didn't take Worf seriously at all. Worf had been a professional player since he was a teenager. He was one of the most famous players in the Circle. He had won and lost before, but no one had ever dared to act so arrogantly in front of him. Worf didn't have a good temper to begin with. At this moment, even the most good-tempered person wouldn't be able to control themselves. Worf leaned against the edge of the stage to prevent Bai Ming-yu from approaching him. Now that Bai Ming-yu had given up on stealth, Worf naturally wouldn't let her get away with it. Go to hell! Worf roared, lowered his head, and charged at Bai Ming-yu with charge. Naturally, Bai Ming-yu wouldn't just sit and wait for death. She activated swift movement and dodged to the side. But at this moment, Worf suddenly cancelled the skill and used lunging slash. He instantly appeared in front of Bai Ming-yu, grabbed the hilt of his sword with both hands, and swung it from left to right. Whirlwind activate. Whirlwind was a 360-degree Yoi skill with no blind spot. Bai Ming-yu couldn't dodge in time and was instantly sliced into pieces. Bang! However, when Worf's whirlwind hit Bai Ming-yu, she suddenly exploded and turned into a cloud of smoke. Shadow clone technique? Worf didn't panic when he saw that Bai Ming-yu had been destroyed. Once whirlwind was used, unless he cancelled the skill, there was no way to stop it. It didn't matter if the enemy was in front of him or behind him. As long as they were within the skill's range, they would take damage. The shadow clone technique only lasted for 1 second at most, and whirlwind slash lasted for 5 seconds. Worf was not afraid of North Sea Yu's shadow clone technique. After all, they were currently in the arena. Without stealth, an assassin would not be able to hide. However, Worf was soon at a loss. Logically speaking, Bai Ming-yu should have reappeared soon after she disappeared. However, Worf's whirlwind slash was almost over, and there was still no sign of her in the arena. Not only did Worf lose sight of Bai Ming-yu in the ring, but the audience also lost sight of her. What's going on? Is there a bug in the system? Where did that kid go? No way there's such a bug. In order to ensure viewing pleasure, the audience's field of view was from God's perspective. Assassins in stealth could also see their shadows. It was reasonable that Bai Ming-yu's sudden disappearance from the arena was treated as a system bug. Pooh! Just as everyone was looking for Bai Ming-yu's figure on the stage, an arm suddenly reached out from underneath Worf. The arm swung and grabbed Worf's ankle tightly. Worf was shocked when his ankle was grabbed, and he instinctively lowered his head. At the same time, another arm emerged from the ground with a dagger in hand. The dagger slashed across Worf's ankle, causing a mist of blood. Earth escape, mental decapitation, tendon flick. Ouch! Worf felt his legs go soft, and he lost all feeling in one of his legs. A buff also appeared on his head. Tendon flick. Movement speed decreased by 60% for 30 seconds. F***CK, what skill is that? Earth escape? So shameless. Of course. Earth escape was one of the most shameless skills in the closed beta. It was comparable to Chun Xiang's summon. Countless experts had been injured by this skill, and even Wang Yu had a headache over it. It was not embarrassing for Worf to be tricked by Earth escape. After slowing Worf down, Bai Ming-yu leaped behind Worf. For experts, movement speed was definitely the most important attribute in PvP. Worf's movement speed had plummeted by 60%. Although he knew there was someone behind him, he did not have the strength to turn around. Thud! Before Worf could turn around, Bai Ming-yu raised her dagger and smashed it into the back of Worf's head, stunning him on the spot. Throat slit. Backstab. Instant hell slash. Bai Ming-yu's combo was executed in one go without any hesitation. Before Worf was stunned, all her attacks landed on his back. Among all classes, Assassin's explosive damage was only slightly inferior to Mage's. Even tanks would lose half their HP if they were hit by the combo. Worf was only a weapon warrior. His defense was not as good as a tank's, and he was low on HP. Naturally, he could not withstand Baiming Yuyu's explosive skill. In fact, Worf had reacted the moment Baiming Yuyu appeared behind him. However, with his movement speed reduced by 60%, Worf could not retaliate. Just like that, Worf could only watch as his HP was emptied. He helplessly transformed into a ray of white light and appeared in the middle of the team. The ragtag bunch won the third round. Awesome! Awesome! In an instant, the audience burst into deafening cheers. One had to admit that although Earth Escape wasn't much of a spectator, the tension and excitement that came with it were still very strong. Imagine an opponent looking around for you, and suddenly reaching out from the ground. That feeling was exhilarating. Of course, players with masochistic tendencies could also imagine a hand suddenly reaching out from the ground while they were looking around. It was also quite exciting. Not only did Baiming Yuyu's counterattack with Earth Escape show everyone what an assassination was, it also gave them hope. At this moment, the audience's cheers rose and fell in succession in the spectator stands. Luckily, I didn't tear up my ticket. I'm so lucky, I'm so lucky. Yeah, I have to vote for Iron Ox. However, compared to the others' excitement, Baiming Yuyu's expression was especially serious. This was because she knew that the next round wouldn't be as easy as before. The reason why she was able to defeat Worf so easily was mainly because of the surprise effect of Earth Escape. Now that she had exposed her trump card too early, her opponent would definitely be on guard. Winning in this situation would depend on luck. 8. Chapter 1880. Although he was knocked out of the ring, it wasn't too shameful for Wolf to win 2 games in a row. After all, Baiming Yuyu's Earth Escape was too sudden, and no one could guarantee that they wouldn't fall for it in that situation. Next was the 4th round. The second player from the Free Battle team was none other than Wade the Spider-Man. Wade was also quite unlucky. Originally, with his strength and class advantage, it should have been very difficult for him to lose in the professional arena. In the end, he just so happened to meet Wang Yu. That loss was really a bit embarrassing and spoiling the mood. But Wade was still very excited that he was randomly assigned to this round. This was a humiliating situation. Just now, Wolf had lost even more miserably than Wade, but he could still turn the tables. No matter who went up at this time, as long as they didn't meet those freaks from the motley crew, they could wash away the shame of the previous round. Seeing that her opponent was Wade, Baiming Yuyu felt a lot of pressure. In terms of profession, Baiming Yuyu didn't have any additional advantages against assassins. In terms of strength, although Baiming Yuyu had the title of King of Mercenaries, she was still the King of Amateurs. On the other hand, Wade was a genuine top-notch expert that could be counted among the top in the world. This was like a provincial team champion participating in the Olympics. Her opponents were all international players, and they weren't on the same level at all. Baiming Yuyu's highest record was only a national champion, and she was certainly a bit weaker in this world competition. After all, esports wasn't table tennis, and a world champion and a national champion weren't on the same level. Although the assassin's playstyle was highly operable, it was also simple and crude. The key was the use of stealth. However, after the game began, Wade didn't have the slightest intention of stealth. Instead, he hooked his finger at Baiming Yuyu opposite him. Whether it was expression or action, it was exactly the same as Baiming Yuyu in the previous round. Seeing this scene, the audience couldn't help but boo. It was clear that Wade was trying to get back at Baiming Yuyu for showing off. A professional-level expert was really petty to stoop to the same level as an amateur expert. And when Baiming Yuyu saw that Wade was so arrogant that he didn't even use stealth, she was delighted. Again, half of an assassin's strength came from stealth. In the last round, Dark North has fish didn't use stealth, because he had an even more advanced concealment technique like Earth Escape. After attracting the opponent's attention, he could attack the opponent's back. But if Wade didn't use stealth, it would really be a bit arrogant. Bai Ming Yu knew the difference in strength between her and her opponent, but in this situation, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious. Humph! Bai Ming Yu snorted coldly, and her figure disappeared in the air. Seeing this, Wade opened his right palm slightly and shot a shadow towards the ground. Sha sha sha. At this time, only a clear sound was heard. With Wade as the center, the phantom spread out like a spider web, instantly covering all the ground within 500 meters of Wade. Silver thread barrier. Using the silver threads to create an invisible detection area with a range of 500 meters, he could see through all enemy units within the skill's range. The silver silk barrier was invisible, and when Wade used his skill just now, his movements weren't big. Although the audience saw it clearly, Bai Ming Yu, as the person in charge, didn't notice it in the slightest. Bai Ming Yu was extremely fast. Just as Wade laid down the silver silk barrier, Bai Ming Yu had already turned behind Wade, and then she picked up her dagger and activated swift movement, stabbing Wade in the back with backstab. Poochie! Bai Ming Yu left an afterimage and stabbed Wade in the back of the waist. Little did she know that when Bai Ming Yu stepped into the range of Wade's silver silk barrier, Wade had already sensed it. Just as the dagger stabbed into Wade's body, Bai Ming Yu's pupils suddenly shrank, feeling that something was wrong. Fake. This is Shadow Clone. Bai Ming Yu's reaction was so fast that after realizing that she had stabbed the wrong target, she cancelled the skill without thinking and rolled forward. Almost at the same time, the space behind Bai Ming Yu suddenly distorted, and Wade stretched out his dagger behind him. That was close. Seeing Wade behind her, Bai Ming Yu's heart thumped. Fortunately, she dodged quickly, otherwise she would have fallen into Wade's hands just now. Seeing that Bai Ming Yu had dodged his attack, Wade was also slightly startled, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. He did not expect the assassin in front of him to react so quickly. It seemed that defeating Worf was not just by relying on Earth Escape. At this time, Bai Ming Yu had already used stealth, and an assassin without stealth naturally had to fight head-on with her opponent. In a head-on confrontation, Bai Ming Yu knew that she would definitely not be Wade's match, so she took advantage of the situation and plunged her head down, using Earth Escape. At this moment, the corners of Wade's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smile. Silver silk barrier. Collect. Wade stretched out his palm towards the ground and suddenly clenched his fist. Whoosh! A huge net was drawn up on the ground, and it did not matter if Bai Ming Yu plunged down, but she just happened to get into the net. Silver silk barrier bind. Wade crossed his arms, and the large net layer upon layer wrapped around Bai Ming Yu. Before Bai Ming Yu could figure out what was going on, she was directly wrapped up into a pupa by Wade's big net. F***CK F***CK F***CK. Is this skill so shameless? I protest, the free team is cheating, ban them. Seeing Bai Ming Yu caught by Wade's net, Mingdu couldn't help but shout loudly, immediately attracting the attention of the audience. Everyone had played the game for so long, but they had never seen such a shameless person. Cough cough. Everyone from the motley crew coughed and turned their faces to the side, indicating that they did not know this idiot in front of them. Shameless skill? Was there a skill more shameless than Earth Escape in this game? This silver silk barrier was just a very ordinary control skill. The reason why it could catch Bai Ming Yu was entirely because the attributes were somewhat of a counter. If Bai Ming Yu was careful and did not use Earth Escape within the range of the barrier, she could still avoid it. Compared to Earth Escape, which could not even be seen from an omniscient view, this skill was very standard. Mingdu's words seemed to have the tendency of only allowing officials to set fires and not the common people to light lamp. Besides, the skill settings in Rebirth were originally like this. Even if there were more shameless skills, as long as it was within the scope of the system, it was reasonable. Mingdu's protest was really a bit unreasonable. P.S. Good evening everyone, isn't today's update a bit early? Please bookmark, subscribe, recommend and gift monthly tickets. I've really been eating dirt recently. Please remember this book's original domain name. Mobile version website. Chapter 1881. Whether a skill was shameless or not, the system had its own limit. Even if you wanted to ban skills, you had to ban Earth Escape first. Mingdu was obviously trying to cause trouble for Baiming Yuyu with his nonsense. Shut up. Bao San's temper was a bit more violent. He slapped the back of Mingdu's head, forcing Mingdu to shut his mouth. Fortunately, the system was a bit busy and couldn't be bothered with Mingdu's nonsense. Otherwise, Mingdu would become the main culprit for screwing over his teammate. As an agility-based class, assassins relied a lot on speed. At this time, Baiming Yuyu was tied up like a big dumpling and naturally couldn't move. At this time, Wade rushed forward and used gouge on the back of Baiming Yuyu's head. She was stunned. Immediately after, Wade used an assassin combo and knocked Baiming Yuyu off the stage. The fourth round ended. The current score was 1-3. The Motley Crew's advantage in the first round was tied by the free team. Wade's strength could be said to be the strongest in the free team, and the assassin class was indeed the king of PvP. The Motley Crew's strength was already on the weaker side. In the last 2 rounds, none of Wang Yu and the others were randomly assigned. Without any suspense, the last 2 rounds were also easily won by Wade. The second round ended. The final score stopped at 1-9 and the total score was fixed at 4-10. Originally, the Motley Crew had a huge advantage over their opponents, but in the second round, the independent battle team had caught up and left them far behind. In the lounge, compared to the last round, the free team was in a much better mood. Everyone had a smile on their faces. It was as if they were completely different people from the previous gloomy faces. As expected of Wade, old friend. You're still the most reliable at crucial times. Thanks, Wade said proudly without a hint of modesty. This group's strength has always been like this. It's just that everyone was confused by them at the beginning. Now that we have the advantage, it doesn't matter what tricks they play in the next round. That's right. Everyone agreed. In the end, esports competitions still rely on strength. On the Motley Crew's side, everyone frowned and stared at Wuji with a serious face. If the advantage continued, everyone only needed to choose a large map in the last round and walk around. They could use the score to win without fighting the opponent head-on. But now, the score was pulled by more than 6 points. Falling behind in the score caused the ragtag team to fall into a passive situation. Even if they took the initiative to attack, they might not be able to win. Although the Motley team had an expert like Wang Yu, the rest of them were relatively weaker. In a fight between gods of this level, the others were basically the opposite side's free points. One had to know that the final result of the third team battle depended on the score. If the opponent's score was higher than theirs when the time was up, then it would be determined that the opponent had won. If the other party wanted to avoid Wang Yu and the others, it would not be easy for them to capture experts of this level. Firstly, in terms of speed, the demon-like rampage would be much slower. Although Yang Na ran fast, her strength was also the lowest. Moreover, the archer profession was not suitable for team fights when there were no teammates. When the time came, it was hard to say who would kill who. As for Wang Yu, not to mention whether or not Wang Yu could catch up to him, even if he could, it would still be a challenge for him to fight against 10 of them. After all, his opponents weren't ordinary people, but top-tier pro players. Fighting several of them at once was definitely not a problem for Wang Yu. However, a party with a complete set of classes, with extremely high tactical coordination and individual strength, was not as simple as 1+1. At the end of the day, Rebirth was not a single-player game. No matter how strong Wang Yu was, he was still limited by his attribute. He could only use his own skills to maximize the potential of his attribute. Professional players were precisely this type of people, just that they weren't as overboard as Wang Yu. In the face of such a level of opponents, Wang Yu would not be able to destroy the entire field by himself. Otherwise, why would Wang Yu need teammates? He could just compete alone. Wuji pondered for a moment and said, "The third match is very important for us. We must make good use of it. Let's choose Purgatory Factory for the third match." Purgatory Factory? Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was surprised and asked, "Why do we choose this map? Shouldn't we choose a smaller map?" Since they were taking the initiative to attack, they couldn't give the opponent any room to escape. Therefore, in theory, the smaller the map, the better. No. Wuji waved his hand and said, "For a top-tier team like them, the coordination between the teams will definitely be far better than ours. We are already at a disadvantage in terms of raw strength. Naturally, we have to make up for it with the terrain." "But isn't this map a little dangerous?" Chun Xiang frowned and said, "I'm afraid that we will be schemed against by others." Faced with Chun Xiang's doubts, Wuji said calmly, "However, this is the only map that can disperse the cohesion of their team." After the break, both teams entered the game again. The third match officially began. The third map was chosen by the motley crew. As per Wuji's suggestion, Wang Yu chose the Purgatory Factory. As Wang Yu pressed the confirm button, the venue began to change from the original arena to a purgatory full of raging flames. The entire map was filled with churning magma, and the magma kept bubbling. Such a terrifying fiery hell made everyone feel a burning sensation in their hearts. In the middle of the magma pool was a square floor formed by a grid of iron plates. On the iron plates there were rows of things that looked like pet eggs. Just like the iron plates, they were roasted red by the magma. These things were called purgatory demonic seeds. It was an essential material for the Nephilim to create their own kind, and the Purgatory Factory was the operating room for the creation of purgatory demonic seeds. Fortunately, under the setting of the system, the entire scene was only hot, and it wouldn't exceed the upper limit of the player's tolerance. Otherwise, Wang Yu and the others would be roasted like teppanyaki. Right above the ground, there was a small platform floating. This small platform was the operating platform of the Purgatory Factory. This map was discovered by chance when Chuanjun and the others were helping Baiming Yu to complete the mission. Back then, in order to complete the mission in this scene, Chuanjun and the others had spent a lot of effort. At this time, it was actually used by Wuji as the battlefield for the team battle. With a flash of light, both the free team and the motley crew were teleported to the iron plates in the magma at the same time. Wuji raised his head and glanced at the operating platform above his head. Then, he ordered to place one's pride. Chicken, grab the operating platform as soon as possible. Please remember this book's domain name. Mobile version's fastest updated website, M. Chapter 1882. I'll go. To place one's pride was surprised when he heard Wuji's order. Are you kidding me? Shouldn't Uncle Nyo be the one to do such an important job? Yeah, the others were also confused. You can't do a good job without a beard. Wuji, aren't you trying to trick us by letting Chick go to the control panel? Chuanjun's group suffered quite a bit when they were fighting Purgatory Factory. The most important part of this map was the control panel. Such an important thing should be given to the person with the most confidence. Logically speaking, it should belong to Old Cow, Wuji said, but everyone has seen the strength of the other side. Without Old Cow we definitely can't beat them. Uncle Yao, go. To place one's pride looked at Evildoers Run Wild. Evildoers Run Wild was confused. It's my first time on this map. Ugh, to place one's pride was speechless. It was his first time here, so he definitely hadn't seen this map before. He definitely didn't know how to operate the control panel. Letting someone who didn't know how to operate the control panel was no different from letting someone who had never seen a car drive a car. What about Sister Shui? To place one's pride looked at Yang Na. She's a long-range attacker. Wuji looked at to place one's pride with disdain. Chick, can you do it? You're a man and you're pushing this kind of thing to a woman. But I'm scared if I'm alone. To place one's pride said with a guilty conscience. The control panel was suspended in the air, so he had to be separated from the team. In a situation where the opponent was unprecedentedly strong, it was safer to stick together. Wouldn't he be the one left alone if he went to the control panel alone? Moreover, the control panel was the most important place on this map. If he went to the control panel like this, he would probably be the first to be targeted. Look at what you're saying. Wuji curled his lips and said, It's just like how we're not afraid of you letting Old Cow and the others go up. Hurry up and get up, or else I'll make you the first to die. F***CKU Wuji old dog. To place one's pride immediately burst into tears after being threatened by Wuji. Mother****, what kind of people are these? They're too vile, of course, regardless of whether it was to place one's pride or the others. Although they always went against Wuji, they were actually very obedient. With Wuji's personality, those who disobeyed him would not have a good ending. He was definitely not joking when he said that he would make to place one's pride the first to die. They weren't Wang Yu, who was strong enough to look down on all kinds of schemes and plots. Naturally, they wouldn't look for trouble for themselves. As soon as the match began, to place one's pride leaped towards Yin Lao Air, who was below the control panel. Yin Lao Air raised his shield and pushed upwards. To place one's pride used the momentum to easily jump onto the control panel. At the same time, the other independent battle team members had already pulled apart their formation and were pouncing towards the motley crew. Yin Lao Air used charge and ran to the front of the team. He raised his shield and blocked the motley crew behind him. At this time, Chun Xiang glanced at the other independent battle team members and immediately reported 2 coordinates in the battle team chat. 2:16, 7. 15. Rumble. As soon as Chun Xiang finished speaking, the mage in the back of the independent battle team suddenly felt the ground beneath his feet disappear. The iron plate he was stepping on suddenly sank. The mage screamed in pain and fell into the lava. The other members of the independent battle team didn't even have time to look back when they heard the scream. The shield warrior at the front also fell into the lava. The churning lava instantly engulfed the two of them. That's right, the control panel in midair was a remote control used to operate a grid of metal plates on the ground. In the background story, the production of purgatory demon seeds needed to be soaked in purgatory lava to be tempered, and the main purpose of this factory was to temper purgatory demon seeds. Although the damage in the lava wasn't enough to one-shot someone, it was still very high. Fortunately, the shield warrior had high defense and high HP. When he was burned by the lava, the HP bar above his head jumped slightly. He only lost 10,000 HP. However, the mage was in a worse state. The HP bar above his head was directly halved. Actually, losing HP was relatively insignificant for top-tier experts. What was important was that the shield warrior at the front and the damage dealers at the back were the basic elements of a formation. The shield warrior and mage falling into the lava wasn't a big deal, but the formation that they had already formed was directly disrupted. There was a huge gap in the front row, and the back row lost a main damage dealer. During this time when their rhythm was disrupted, the ranged classes of the motley crew attacked the front line mindlessly. In just one exchange, the freelance combat team was beaten black and blue. The players of the independent battle team were all top-tier experts. Wade instantly realized what was going on when he lost the first round. So, he pointed at the motley crew and said, "Everyone, hurry up and move. Don't just stand there. Try to get close to the enemy." Or, it could be said that he was an expert. His ability to adapt to the situation was very strong, and he instantly made a response. The iron plate fell according to coordinates and didn't lock on to a player. This thing was like a non-directional skill. As long as they moved, they could avoid it. The reason why they got close to the motley crew was that the falling iron plate didn't distinguish between friend and foe. Everyone was mixed together, and the coordinates were definitely very messy. This way, it was easy to accidentally hurt their allies, and they would definitely be restrained. However, the independent battle team didn't expect that although the motley crew was very weak, except for a few people, each of them was a person with great skills. For example, Brother Chun was one of the best in the world. His prediction ability had already reached the pinnacle. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that as long as the target took a few steps in front of Chun Xiang, he could calculate the target's movement speed, and thus accurately predict the target's movements, even if the opponent was a world-class expert like the independent battle team. As long as Chun Xiang was given a safe environment to predict, he could make sure the opponent couldn't escape. 8-1210, 139-1911. 16. A series of coordinates appeared in the motley crew's channel, and the iron plates on the ground sank into the lava one after another. The independent battle team couldn't dodge in time and also fell in. Before they could even reach the motley crew, all the members of the free battle team had been burned by the magma. In the chaos, Yin Lao Air raised his shield to protect Chun Xiang, and the others took the opportunity to attack. After a few rounds, the first mage to fall into the lava was sent flying out of the arena by Yang Na's arrow. "Stop moving!" At this time, Wade finally felt that something was wrong. The iron plate on the ground was a little strange. No matter how they dodged, they couldn't avoid the iron plate sinking. It was as if they had turned on a self-targeting cheat. The accuracy of their judgment was simply shocking. It was obvious that there was an expert in this motley crew. Please remember the domain name of this book. Chapter 1883. Thinking of this, Wade hurriedly raised his head and glanced at the console directly above him. To place one's pride was playing excitedly on it. However, Wade did not take to place one's pride seriously at all. Because the console was directly above the ground, a normal person sitting on it wouldn't be able to see what was happening below. Even if Shui Ao were to operate from the console, he would still be able to determine that the person making the predictions wasn't him. At this time, even if he directly attacked to place one's pride, it would be useless. After all, the person who predicted it was still there. If he killed one operator, there would inevitably be another operator following. The so-called treating the symptoms and eliminating the roots. Naturally, he had to find out the person behind the scenes. So Wade took another look at the motley crew on the opposite side. At this glance, he happened to see Chun Xiang protected by Yin Lao Air behind him. Sometimes, excessive protection is to expose the target. At this time, Chun Xiang was specially protected. There must be something wrong. "Old man." Seeing this, Wade immediately ordered the invisible man beside him. "Let's go over and kill that warlock in the green hat." "Okay." The invisible man responded, his figure swayed, and he disappeared from the arena at the same time as Wade. Not far away, Wuji saw the two disappear, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a treacherous smile. Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild took a step back at the same time and stood on the left and right sides of Chun Xiang. Wade and the invisible man were extremely fast. They crossed the fallen area and rushed behind Chun Xiang in an instant. The two looked at each other and raised their daggers at the same time to stab Chun Xiang in the back. However, at the moment when the two of them attacked, they suddenly felt a weight behind them, and a big hand grabbed their collars from behind. One of the two big hands was so powerful that it directly picked up the invisible man who was in the middle of an attack. The other tripped Wade's feet, pushed and pressed his hand, and pressed Wade's face onto the ground that was burned red by the magma. Being grabbed by the collar from behind, the two of them couldn't break free for a while. In a panic, Wade and the Invisible Man looked back and saw two identical faces staring at them and smiling. These two people were none other than Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild. Seeing these two people, the confusion on Wade and Invisible's faces instantly turned into horror. At this moment, Wuji mocked him in a fluent foreign language. "Do you think there's a flaw in my command? Daddy exposed the target to attract you two idiots." After saying that, Wuji casually snapped his fingers and calmly gave orders to Wang Yu and the other man. "Kill them!" Wuji's boss-like tone made Wang Yu and the Invisible Man very unhappy. However, this was a competition. Although they were unhappy, it was reasonable to listen to Wuji's command. The two of them could only vent their dissatisfaction on Wade and the Invisible Man. Logically speaking, although Wang Yu and the Invisible Man were very strong, it would not be so easy to deal with top professional players. However, Wade and the Invisible Man were focused on assassinating Chun Xiang and did not pay attention to Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild at all. As a result, they directly exposed a flaw. When experts fought, a flaw could be fatal, let alone a great expert at the level of Wang Yu. The two of them exerted force in their hands, and Wade and the Invisible Man were squeezed into a ball of white light on the spot and teleported out of the field at the same time. As for Chun Xiang, who was targeted, he did not look back from beginning to end. What a joke! With two great experts standing beside him, Chun Xiang was extremely relieved to hand over his back. Moreover, if it was an attack that even Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild could not block, so what if they could turn back? They could only watch helplessly as they were beaten to death. In the first 5 minutes of the game, 3 people from the free team were eliminated, including their captain, Wade. Seeing the situation on the field, the audience's mood changed once again. In the first game, everyone was full of confidence in the Motley Crew, but in the second game, the Motley Crew revealed their true strength as an amateur team. They thought that the third game would be over, but who knew that this group of guys would once again catch everyone off guard. Relying on the map advantage, the Motley Crew not only completely suppressed their opponents, but also set up a wave of ambushes and successfully knocked the 3 core damage dealers of the free team out of the field. Looking at the current situation, the magma refinement was still ongoing. Without the core damage dealers, it was difficult for the free team to reorganize their formation. Team battles were all about formation and tactic. In terms of tactics, the free team was completely suppressed by their opponents with the advantage of the field, and their formation was also unable to deal damage. If this continued, if the free team did not make reasonable countermeasures, it was only a matter of time before they were wiped out. Worf grabbed the control panel up there. With Wade dead, the command fell into the hands of the second commander of the free team, Gospel. Before he died, Wade left Gospel with his last words: "If you can't kill that warlock, just grab the control panel." Obviously, with the two great experts, Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild, the free team naturally could not kill Chun Xiang. Therefore, Gospel skipped the first round and executed Plan B, grab the control panel. After receiving the order, Worf leaped and used the mountain-shattering slash in midair. Worf's figure once again leaped up to the top of the control panel, the greatsword in his hand pointed downward, and he swung it at To Place One's Pride. F***CK. To Place One's Pride was shocked when he saw Worf suddenly descending from the sky. He scrambled to the edge of the control panel and barely dodged Worf's attack. Boom! Worf's skill landed on the control panel, causing it to shake slightly. Kaboom! At the same time, the ground below them sank, and everyone fell into the magma. "Worf, what the hell are you doing, you dumb ass?" The free team members immediately cursed at the sky. To Place One's Pride also shouted while waving his arms and legs. Pull it out, pull it out! This thing can only press 2 coordinates at once. If you press too many, everything will fall." Although Worf did not quite understand what To Place One's Pride was saying, he had a general idea. He pulled the weapon out, and as expected, the ground below rose again. Everyone on the ground was sweating profusely. "Do you know how to play? You idiot, just press it like that." The ground rose again. To place one's pride let out a long sigh and gave Worf the middle finger with a look of disdain. Worf's expression darkened. He swung his greatsword at to place one's pride. F***ck. Help me. To place one's pride turned pale with fright. He screamed and dodged, but while the control panel was big enough for a person to sit on, it was too small for a fight. To place one's pride was slashed 3 to 4 times in an instant. To place one's pride did not have much health to begin with, and Worf's attacks were vicious. To place one's pride had lost 1/5 of his health with just a few slashes. Please remember this book's domain name. Chapter 1884. Don't panic. To place one's pride panic. To place one's pride suddenly received a message from Wang Yu. To place one's pride had yet to react when another message popped up. Do as I say. Take a step forward and turn around. Towards Wang Yu, Gao respected him from the bottom of his heart. Now that he saw Wang Yu's message, although he did not know what Wang Yu meant, he still did as he was told. At the same time, Worf slashed at to place one's pride's back. To place one's pride took a step forward and dodged the slash. Huh! Worf was slightly taken aback when he saw this. What's wrong with this kid? He didn't even have the strength to fight back a moment ago. How did he dodge my attack now? Was he just lucky? As he pondered, Worf took a step forward and launched a dashing slash at pride. To place one's pride turned around. To place one's pride, Worf's slash grazed to place one's pride's back. Collapsing fist rush. Wang Yu gave another order in the motley cruise channel. To place one's pride realized what was going on after dodging 2 of Worf's attacks. He leaped forward and activated collapsing fist, smashing at Worf. Worf's slash missed and entered a stunned state. He swung his hands and was about to use whirlwind slash, but to place one's pride was already in front of Worf and punched him in the face. Bang! To place one's pride's punch landed on Worf's head. He took a step back and his whirlwind slash was forcefully interrupted. Knee strike. Knee rush. Carry throw. Dominating fist dance. Wang Yu's order appeared in the team channel the moment collapsing fist hit Worf. On the control panel, Ao reached out and pulled Worf, who had lost his balance from the impact, into her hands. She raised her knee and knocked Worf's stomach twice. As a grab skill, knee strike had high priority. The 2 knees forced Worf to bend over. To place one's pride grabbed Worf's ear and kneed Worf in the face. Even though the knee rush was a simple move and did not look fancy, it was still a Grandmaster of Combat's ultimate move, and its damage was only slightly lower than the shadow chain kick. Boom! With a loud bang, Worf's feet left the ground and he was sent flying backward. It was not too late to send his opponent flying. Concealing pride took a step forward and wrapped his arms around Worf's waist. Then, he leaned back. Duong! To place one's pride picked Worf up and smashed him on the ground. Carry throw. Similar to knee strike, it was a grab skill. The damage was not high but the priority was high. It also had a short stun effect. Dominating fist dance. After throwing Worf to the ground, Extreme Pride jumped on top of Worf and shouted. He clenched his fists and rained punches on Worf's face. Worf, who was struggling to get up, was hammered to the ground again. This isn't a dream, right? To place one's pride knocked Worf to the ground with a series of combo attacks. Worf could not even get up from the ground. Worf was in complete silence. Fighters were a class that had weak points in all aspects. The only advantage they had was their handsomeness. Not only did they look handsome, but their skills were also cool, especially when they used combo attack. Worf's punches landed on flesh. Whether it was the visual impact or the visual impact, he was definitely the best among all the classes. Fighters relied on combo attacks to make a living. Their skills were on cooldown and had low consumption. To place one's pride was not weak to begin with. With Wang Yu's guidance, the combo attacks were perfectly chained. To place one's pride, Worf, an expert of his generation, could not even fight back. The grandmasters of combat of this motley crew were all too ridiculous, weren't they? There were those who threw their opponents to their deaths, and there were those who beat their opponents up with ease. Now, even a little kid was able to pin a pro like Worf to the ground. Could it be that the strongest class in the game was the Grandmaster of Combat? How is this possible? Below the ring, Invisible Man and Wade were even more dumbfounded. To place one's pride's information was introduced. They were not weak, but they did not have any advantage in front of top experts. Worf could be said to be a piece of cake to deal with him, but the reality was shocking. If it was Wang Yu and evildoers run wild, it would be fine. Both of them were tall and burly, and it was obvious that they were not to be trifled with. However, it was unbelievable that such a skinny kid could also have such strength. Conservatively speaking, under normal circumstances, Wang Yu would be able to take on at least 3 top-notch experts. It would not be a problem for her to take on 2 monsters at once. Although Yang Na was slightly weaker, she would not lose to anyone in a one-on-one fight. Therefore, in the 6-on-9 battle below the control table, Wang Yu and evildoers run wild had the upper hand. As for the control table, with Wang Yu's attention divided, to place one's pride seemed to be possessed by Wang Yu. His combat strength rose by a few levels, and the miserable Worf did not even have time to retaliate before to place one's pride killed him in a combo. After ending the battle with a single blink chain kick, to place one's pride stood on the control table, staring at his fists in shock. He did not move an inch, as if he was reminiscing about the battle just now. To place one's pride usually only imagined killing a top expert. He did not expect to actually do it today. Although he had killed Worf under Wang Yu's long-range command, it was enough to prove that with his current attributes, it was not impossible to kill a top expert. To place one's pride stood on the control table, expressionless and motionless, and the audience could not help but sigh. What was acting cool? What was an expert? After killing such a powerful opponent, Worf's expression did not change in the slightest. It was as if he had done something insignificant. This was the acting that a true expert should have. They did not expect this kid to be so strong at such a young age. As expected, the younger generation would surpass the older. To place one's pride killed Worf, and to place one's pride regained control of the control table. In the team channel, Wang Yu had also handed over control of to place one's pride to Chun Xiang. Purgatory tempering continued. After losing 4 DPS players, the independent team only had 6 players left. Without any DPS, they were already at a disadvantage. To place one's pride had started to make things difficult for them on the control table. The result was obvious. Under the combined damage from the Motley Bunch team, the independent team members were knocked off the stage one after another. In less than 10 minutes, all the independent team members were knocked off the stage by the Motley Bunch team. Please remember this book's domain name. Chapter 1885. The winner of the team match would receive an additional reward of 10 points. Since the Ragtag team had eliminated the other team unscathed in the third match, they received a total of 20 points. The final score was 23-9. The Ragtag team had won the match with an absolute advantage. Both teams left the arena amidst the audience's enthusiastic applause. With this victory, the Ragtag team had made a name for itself. The audience who had watched the elimination matches all knew that the Motley Crew's main playstyle was to play dirty. However, in this competition, the Motley Crew had always been fighting head-on. Although they had lost the second match very badly, they had won the first and third matches very beautifully. To place one's pride in Worf's battle on the control panel had made everyone recognize the Ragtag team's third Grandmaster of Combat. It also made everyone realize one thing. If you encountered an assassin from the Ragtag team, You could fight as you pleased as long as you were careful with your feet. If you encountered a priest or warlock, you had to treat them seriously because they were not only shameless, but also shameless. If you encountered a Grandmaster of Combat, you had to pack up and get ready to run. The Grandmaster of Combat from the Ragtag team was playing a different game than the other Grandmasters of Combat. How careless, after walking out of the competition room, Wade still hadn't recovered from the match just now. He tossed and turned and mumbled, "Why is that Grandmaster of Combat who doesn't have any sense of existence actually so good at fighting, wasn't that right?" The reason why the motley crew could annihilate an independent team without suffering any casualties was largely due to the Purgatory Factory map. If Worf had defeated To Place One's Pride on the control panel, he would have gained control of the battlefield. It was uncertain who would have won the last match. However, the Grandmaster of Combat on the control panel was so strong that even an expert like Worf was one-sidedly beaten. This was something that Wade did not even dare to imagine. As a world-class expert, Wade had absolute confidence in his and his companions' abilities, because they represented the highest level of operation. After a few matches, the Ragtag team and the Freelance team had a preliminary understanding of the Ragtag team's abilities. Although Yang Na was strong, she could only be considered slightly stronger in front of the Free Battle team. If she had not been caught off guard, Yang Na might not have been able to win against the Free Battle team. Of course, Evildoers Run Wild had the confidence to defeat anyone in a Freelance battle team. However, as a Grandmaster of Combat who focused on increasing his points, he was not completely flawless. Only Wang Yu played with Wade in the palm of his hand in an understated manner during the competition, and his strength could not be seen at all. Wade could understand the existence of an expert of this level in the world. After all, the world was so big that nothing was too strange. But when another one jumped out in the third match, Wade was a little shocked. The probability of two experts of this level appearing in the same team could be imagined. But the fact was right in front of him, and it was reasonable that Wade couldn't turn around for a while. Anyone would doubt their own life if this happened to them. To place one's pride's strength, Wade wasn't the only one who was doubting his life. They were all experts, so they naturally looked at things on the same level. The things that Wade found hard to understand were also things that other experts could not understand. This is really unexpected. Team 9 States was also surprised. To place one's pride, that kid really hid his strength well. That doesn't make sense. To place one's pride kid, I've seen that kid before. When did he become so abnormal? 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was somewhat puzzled. Among the major battle teams present, apart from the defeated Free Battle team, 9 States was the only one who had officially fought against the motley crew. When Jiao Ao was still in the domestic professional league, he had also participated in several matches. At that time, the crotch-kicking competition was still vivid in his mind. It was said that after the end of a match, this kid even pooped in his pants. For more information, please scroll to the previous page. For such a low-class guy to suddenly burst out with this kind of unimaginable strength, it was truly inconceivable for 9 Regions team. Obviously, to place one's pride isn't the abnormal one. Just as 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was feeling puzzled, 5 Lakes 4 Seas said indifferently, "Not to place one's pride? Then who is it?" The expression on 3 Mountains 5 Peaks' face became even more puzzled. To place one's pride just pressed Worf to the ground and beat him up. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. Must seeing it with your own eyes be the truth? 5 Lakes 4 Seas smiled and said, 3 Mountains, raise your right hand. When 3 Mountains 5 Peaks heard that, he subconsciously raised his right hand. See that? 5 Lakes 4 Seas pointed at 3 Mountains 5 Peaks and said to everyone in 9 States team, "Everyone understands what's going on, right?" This, hearing 5 Lakes and 4 Seas words, everyone was taken aback for a moment. Then, they came to their senses and said in disbelief, You mean, someone is secretly directing Ju Ao? That's right. 5 Lakes 4 Seas nodded and said, I know that Wuji person. To place one's pride is really as strong as he seems to be. He definitely wouldn't have let him win the last match in the first match. But there's no communication between the people outside and inside the arena. Who's directing? 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was still puzzled. The audience outside the arena had God's perspective. In order to prevent cheating, any communication between the people outside and inside the arena was blocked. Who says that only people outside the arena can direct? 5 Lakes 4 Seas said, can't they direct people inside the arena? Inside the arena? You mean? That's right. 5 Lakes 4 Seas turned his head and looked at Wang Yu, who had just walked out of the competition room. He said, no one here dares to say that they can win against someone of Worf's standard. There's no one else who can direct to place one's pride to beat up Mrs. Worf other than that Iron Ox. It can't be. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks exclaimed, when to place one's pride and Worf were fighting on the control table, Iron Ox was also dealing with other people. That's why he's so terrifying. 5 Lakes 4 Seas sighed and said, no matter who he's fighting against, no matter how many people there are, he always looks like he hasn't used his full strength. He can even do 2 things at once. It's clear that this guy is unfathomable. Hiss, when 5 Lakes 4 Seas said this, everyone in the 9 States team sucked in a breath of cold air. The 9 States team naturally had some understanding of Wang Yu's strength, but it was only at the level of an expert who was stronger than them. However, after 5 Lakes 4 Seas analysis, everyone suddenly realized that their understanding of this guy was just the tip of the iceberg. They had no idea where the scum of Chuanjin found such a terrifying monster. Kung Fu? Could it be that everything that the kid said was true? 4_4613/ Chapter 1886. As the most unpopular team in the tournament, Motley Bunch was surrounded by reporters the moment they came out of the competition room. The reporters surrounded Wang Yu and the others and asked with their microphones, Dear gods, do you have anything to say for defeating a popular team as an amateur team? Brother, please make way first. Without waiting for the others to answer, Evildoers Run Wild squeezed to the front of the team and gestured to Wang Yu to step back. Wang Yu did not know what this guy was trying to do, so he stepped back. At this time, the evildoer Heng Xing said in an incomparably arrogant manner, I'm not targeting anyone, I'm saying that everyone here is trash. F***CK. Hearing Evildoers Run Wild's words, everyone in the stadium spat out a mouthful of blood. Arrogant, too arrogant. He only won 1 match and he dares to say such big words. He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even Motley Bunch was dumbfounded by Evildoers Run Wild's words. Brother, this is an international competition, can't you be more low-key? Wuji's face was red as he reminded him. Even Old Cow wouldn't dare to say that. Before Wuji could finish his sentence, Wang Yu pointed at Evildoers Run Wild and said, including you, all of you, stand properly. I want to repeat what I said just now. Wuji covered his face and broke down. He was really defeated by these two. Motley Bunch returned to the audience after the match. After a short break, it was time for the second match of the day. With the example of the freelance team, the remaining 7 teams did not dare to rashly challenge them. After all, Rebirth was now a brand new mode, and the strength of the players could not be judged by the previous standard. Now was the era of experts, and the freelance team's strong players were defeated by amateur teams, so no one dared to underestimate other opponents. The lights in the venue dimmed, and 2 beams of light fell on the 7 teams that had yet to compete. After some flashes, the 2 teams for the second match were selected. Team Templar from the European server and Team BTR from the Asian server. Wang Yu and the others had only watched 1 match of the BTR team. As the opponents were too weak, Wang Yu and the others did not see much of their strength. However, To be able to be on par with the 9 provinces team and be worshipped by Bao San as an idol, their strength was definitely not weak. The Templar battle team could be said to be the most experienced battle team among all the battle teams present. They were once known as the strongest battle team in the European server. It was only after a large financial group invested in them and established the Pantheon battle team that the legend of the Templar battle team came to an end. Previously, the members of the Quan Jin sect had also clashed with the Templar battle team. Everyone still remembered the experts in the Templar battle team, especially the spatial sorcerer Jeff and the gravitational sorcerer Locke. Even now, the members of the Quan Jin sect were still traumatized by these two. Although Miss Meng she was a player of Chuanjin in name, she was the leader of Team Templar in this competition. Under the anticipation of the audience, Meng she led Team Templar and Team BTR into the competition room. Then, the projections of both teams appeared on the stage, and the main contestants of both teams were presented to the audience. When the people from Chuanjin saw the contestants of Team Templar, they were surprised. The people from Chuanjin had seen the experts of Team Templar before. However, the people from Team Templar were only familiar with Locke, Bai and Jeff. If it was a normal competition, there was nothing wrong with hiding their strength. However, the S-rank professional league was the top international competition. In a competition of this level, there was no need to hide their strength. Currently, only 2 of the players that the people from Chuanjin knew were officially participating in the competition. Didn't that mean that most of the experts from before were substitutes? Such strong experts were only substitute. One could only imagine the strength of the main players. It was no wonder that Team Templar was known as the strongest team in the European server back then. Their strength was indeed shocking. After a round of introduction by the host, the first match finally began. As usual, the map of the first match was the arena that had never changed since ancient times. Team BTR sent a warrior called Brahman. He was tall and burly, holding a dragon-headed giant axe in his hand. He looked rather domineering. Locke Bai was the first player from Team Templar. This surprised the people from Chuanjin once again. Under normal circumstances, the first match of the competition was a probing stage for both sides. Sending the strongest or weakest contestant would not be able to find out anything. Therefore, during the probing stage, players with average strength would be sent out to fight the first match. Since Team Templar sent Locke Bai to fight, it could be seen that Locke Bai's strength was only average. Locke Bai isn't going to be easy this time. Looking at the 2 people on the stage, Chun Xiang, who was also a warlock, could not help but frown. Warriors were a proper combat profession. Since the day online games were born, warriors had always been the mainstream among the major professions. They had fans who did not care about flattery. Although they were not as good as assassins in terms of damage output and were not as good as mages in terms of group damage, their attributes were outstanding in all aspects. They were undeniably the #1 combat profession. On the contrary, the position of warlocks was originally the same as priests. They belonged to the field control support. Not only were they not suitable for combat, but they were also not suitable for individual combat. Moreover, Locke Bai was a gravitational warlock. Ordinary warlocks relied on the advantage of magic to restrain combat professions. They could use skills such as deceleration and poison control to deal with Locke Bai. On the other hand, gravitational warlocks had greater requirements for combat environment. This arena was just an arena. Not only was the venue small, but there were also no obstacles. Locke Bai obviously did not have the slightest advantage in a one-on-one fight with his opponent in this environment. That's not necessarily true. Wuji touched his chin and said, Locke Bai is very smart. Since he dared to be the first to fight even though he knew that his opponent would choose this map, it shows that he is very confident of his strength. Although he does not have the advantage, it is not necessarily an easy fight. While the 2 of them were talking, the battle on the stage had already begun. The warrior from Team BTR called Brahman lowered his head and charged at Lok Bai. Hee! Earth attraction! Seeing that Brahman was about to hit him, Lok Bai smiled and pointed at Brahman with his right hand. Brahman, who was charging at high speed, suddenly slowed down as if he had stepped into mud. Ha! Brahman was not weak either. After being slowed down by Lok Bai, Brahman shouted and dispelled the crowd control. He grabbed the handle of the giant axe with both hands and swung it, activating Whirlwind Slash. Chapter 1887. Brahman was less than 2 meters away from Lok Bai, and his axe was a long-handled weapon. The range of his Whirlwind Slash was naturally larger than that of an ordinary warrior. Lok Bai was a warlock, so his movement speed wasn't fast. Moreover, the physical damage of a mage was negligible in front of his Whirlwind Slash. At such a close distance, it would be difficult for Lok Bai to dodge or block. Spatial attraction. Just when everyone thought that Lok Bai was going to be killed by Brahman's Whirlwind Slash, he tapped his staff on the ground and flew up. He perfectly dodged Brahman's skill and flew above him. Brahma wasn't weak either. Seeing that her Whirlwind Slash had missed, she decisively cancelled the skill and swung her axe upward. She leaped high into the air and used Rising Dragon Slash towards Lok Bai. Lok Bai leaned back slightly and dodged Brahman's Rising Dragon Slash. Sanskrit was already prepared. The moment the Rising Dragon Slash was released, the axe blade turned downwards and followed up with the Collapsing Mountain Slash. Collapsing Mountain not only had high attack power, but it also had a displacement effect. It was also a skill that attacked from above. At this moment the two were very close. Even if Lok Bai could fly, he wouldn't be able to dodge Brahman's skill. Brahman had already calculated this from the moment Lok Bai dodged his Whirlwind Slash. It had to be said that as an expert of the BTR team, Brahman was quite skilled. It could be said to be seamless. He was able to come up with this kind of strategy in the instant of battle, which was somewhat inconsistent with his rugged appearance. Ha! Brahman shouted as he jumped on Lok Bai's head. His axe smashed down heavily on Lok Bai's head. The main effect of Collapsing Mountain was to send Lok Bai flying. As long as Lok Bai was hit by the Collapsing Mountain, he would definitely be sent flying. Once he was sent flying, the follow-up combo would naturally hit. Retreat. Who knew that at this moment, Lok Bai would suddenly open his arms. The audience saw the air around Lok Bai distort slightly and suddenly expand outwards with Lok Bai as the center. Buzz. Brahman, who was above Lok Bai, felt his head buzz. He was directly sent flying by a powerful force. This is, seeing this scene, the audience was directly dumbfounded. This move was so familiar. Could it be the legendary Shinra Tensei? Meow, this warlock actually had such an abnormal skill? In Rebirth, there were 2 types of skills, physical and magical. As a warlock, Lok Bai's skills were naturally of the magical category. Collapsing Mountain was one of the warrior skills with the highest priority. The fact that it could be forcefully interrupted with a spell showed how high the skill's priority was. With such a high priority, even a skill like Bouncing Mountain, which had the highest physical priority, could be suppressed. One could just imagine how high its magic priority would be. As long as the priority of a skill was not higher than this skill, Lok Bai was invincible. As expected of a world-class competition, it was indeed an eye-opener. In the previous match, they had seen the shameless earth escape technique, and in this match, they had seen an even more shameless skill. Duong. Brahman couldn't fly. After being interrupted in mid-air, he instantly lost his balance and fell heavily on the arena. Brahman was a warrior, and his armor was extremely hard. When he fell from the sky, he smashed a large hole in the arena. Brahman also fell into a stunned state. Lok Bai, who was in mid-air, calmly looked at Sanskrit under his feet. His robe fluttered even though there was no wind. Coupled with his innate aura of an expert, he had the demeanor of a grandmaster. The audience below the stage was stunned. Lok Bai was able to beat a top-notch expert to such a state with just a few moves. The strength and momentum that Lok Bai displayed surpassed that of Wang Yu and evildoers run wild in the previous match. F***ck. Even the Motley Bunch members were dumbfounded. Mingdu was even more surprised. I haven't seen this kid in a long time. He's become even more abnormal. Yeah, Mingjian Daoshua said unhappily. I told you that their boss doesn't have good intentions. He had such a group of experts under him, and he even asked for Mingjian Daoshua to win. Clearly, he didn't want to lose face with Meng Shi, so he tactfully rejected Mingjian Daoshua. He was obviously pointing at Mingjian Daoshua's nose and saying, "You're just a small merchant. Whether it's wealth or strength, you don't deserve it. Knowing your own position is more important than anything else. My condolences, my condolences." Mingdu patted Mingjian Daoshua's shoulder and comforted him. "Isn't it nice for us to be single dogs together?" Scram. Mingjian Daoshua glared at Mingdu and subconsciously patted the spot on his shoulder that Mingdu had just touched. "You guys didn't die when you were chased by this guy last time?" Wang Yu asked Wuji in surprise. Yeah. Wuji nodded. "Only some trash died once." As he spoke, Wuji glanced at Mingdu and to place one's pride. What a surprise. Wang Yu stroked his chin with a meaningful look. "You bastard, you're really asking for a beating." A smart person like Wuji could naturally hear the mockery in Wang Yu's words. Hearing Wang Yu's words, Wuji's face darkened. But then again, Lok's performance was quite remarkable to be able to surprise someone as ferocious as Wang Yu. In the arena, Lok, who was floating in the air, didn't wait for Brahman's dizzy state to come to an end. He opened and closed his right hand, aiming at Brahman. Brahman, who was on the ground, involuntarily floated up. In a state of weightlessness, no matter how much Brahman struggled, he couldn't break free from Lok's control. Lok's left hand hooked upwards slightly. The gravel on the ground flew up and floated along with Brahman. Die! Then, Lok Bai opened his left palm and pushed it forward. The gravel turned into sharp blades that were aimed at Sanskrit from all directions. Goodbye! As Lok clenched his left hand, all the sharp blades flew from all directions and stabbed into Brahman's body. Poochie! Poochie! The sharp stone spikes pierced Brahman like a hedgehog. 1121-1154-945. The damage of the stone spikes wasn't high, but there were so many of them. There were hundreds of them in all directions. Many a little makes a mickle, and the damage output was shocking. Brahman only had around 100,000 HP. How could he withstand such damage? He immediately turned into a white light and flew off the stage. Team Templar won the first round. Chapter 1888. This son of AB*TCH is pretty fierce. The audience sighed endlessly when they saw Fan Yin being pierced by thousands of swords. It seemed like this year's competition was more exciting than they had imagined. Logically speaking, although mages had high damage output in the game, their PvP battles weren't very entertaining. It was nothing more than fighting each other with all sorts of fancy magic. At first glance, it was very eye-catching, but after watching it for a long time, it was easy to get tired of it. Without the special effects, there wasn't much to watch. It wasn't up to par with the punches of fighters, nor the excitement of assassins. However, Lok Bai's battle just now had changed everyone's view of PvP battles between mages. Especially the scene where Lok Bai pierced Brahma to death while floating in the air, it left a deep impression on everyone present. Coupled with Lok Bai's long robe that fluttered without any wind, it was so cool that it could split the sky. Meng Shi was a person who liked to show off. She was very pleased to see the players in her team being so eye-catching. Next was the second round. The second round was the Templar team's familiar face, the spatial mage Jeff. Jeff's motley crew had suffered a lot from him. This guy was also a sly one. Although he didn't talk much, he was very strong. His spatial magic was also unparalleled, and his strength was not inferior to Lock Bai's. In less than 3 seconds, he had used a dimensional space slash to cut his opponent into two. Such a clean and shocking killing method once again caused an uproar in the audience. It was unknown whether BTR was not as strong as before, or this year's Templar team was too strong. The competition progressed one round after another. In the first round, the opponents of the Templar team were each stronger than the last. After 5 rounds, BTR didn't win a single one. Even their captain, Agua, was smashed into a meat patty by the opponent's mage. The audience and other contestants were dumbfounded. Teams that could participate in the international competition were naturally top experts. The difference in strength wouldn't be too big. In this sort of S-rank pro league, even if they could win against their opponents the majority of the time, it would be a battle of attrition. However, this was the first time that the Templar battle team had crushed their opponents with overwhelming strength. For the second match, it was unknown whether BTR was unlucky or Templar was too lucky, but Jeff was the first to be sent out. Jeff was also a ruthless person. Without saying a word, he executed 5-dimensional slashes in a row, neatly completing the pentakill. Quintuple kill. Quintuple kill in an S-rank competition, this was the first time in history. Of course, it did not mean that the BTR team was weak. It was mainly because they were too unlucky to have encountered Jeff, a spatial mage, in a relatively small venue. The spatial spell was the most powerful spell in Rebirth. It was fast to cast and untraceable. More importantly, only hidden professions could learn this spell. What was a hidden class? It was a profession that was different from normal professions. As top-tier experts, all of the participants present were familiar with the various professions. It was common knowledge to know what skills, strategies a regular class had. Hidden classes, on the other hand, were very mysterious. Even top-notch experts had only a smattering of knowledge regarding this mysterious profession. As the saying went, "Know thyself and know thy enemy to win 100 battles." The difference in information was the most crucial factor that directly affected the outcome of the battle. Jeff used the spatial spell that no one had ever seen before. This caused the members of the BTR team to be stunned. Of course, they would not be able to deal with it if they did not understand the spatial spell. It was reasonable that Jeff killed 5 of them consecutively. The other participants expressed that they could understand this. After all, everyone was terrified when they saw Jeff's sudden spatial crack. None of them had the confidence to dodge such a strange attack. The third match was even simpler. Lock Bai's gravitational spell was a skill that came with a group taunt. As long as the target was within the skill's range, he would be able to forcefully attract the target. Jeff's spatial spell was even more terrifying when used to deal damage. He could kill in one hit. One could imagine the outcome of a strong team control coupled with a terrifying damage output. The pitiful BTR team was also a first-tier team. They did not get a single point after 3 matches. They were defeated by the Templar team and had to leave the competition. Such a one-sided advantage made the audience deeply remember this terrifying team. Next up were the third and fourth matches. The competition lasted until past 10 o'clock at night. The 4 matches were finally over and the 4 teams advanced to the next round. The Motley Crowd team, the Templar team, the 9 States team, the Rebel team, and the Pantheon team that had a bye in the first round successfully advanced to the next round. The Motley Crowd team and the Templar team became the dark horses of this competition. One was an amateur team that defeated a professional team despite being weaker than them. The other was a team that defeated a team of the same level. This made the audience deeply feel their powerful strength. In comparison, the other teams were much more elegant. Although their matches were not spectacular, they were rather average compared to the first 2 teams. The competition in real life and in the game were synchronized. When the last match ended, the names of the 5 teams that advanced to the next round had spread throughout the entire game. The 2 Asia server teams that advanced to the next round were both from the Chinese server. This made all the Chinese players even more excited. As the home of the Motley Crowd team, Yu Huiqing once again shone brightly. As the center of attention, Wang Yu and his team had already left the stadium during the chaos and returned to the hotel early. In the hotel, the Motley Crowd team did not feel complacent because of today's victory. On the contrary, everyone had a rare serious expression. Even Wang Yu was frowning. This was because they knew that the competition would become more and more difficult as time went on. Tomorrow's competition is going to be tough. After a long silence, Wuji was the first to break the silence. Yeah. Everyone nodded in agreement. Everyone had watched today's competition from the beginning to the end and had a deep understanding of the strength of the top experts. In the past, everyone was just an audience and did not know much about the top experts. Moreover, with the huge mountain that was Wang Yu, they did not pay attention to anyone else. Therefore, they did not feel any pressure if they did not personally stand in the current position. Now that they had watched the competition for a day, everyone finally understood how big the gap between the top experts and the ordinary experts was. Putting aside the other battles, the big battle with the Templar team alone had let Wuji and the others know what a true expert was. Please remember the domain name of this book. Chapter 1889. A true expert was not only in terms of mechanics and attributes, but also in terms of their skill system. In front of an opponent of the same level, only an unexpected and unfamiliar skill would be able to make the opponent untraceable. This was something that the Templar battle team did very well. Whether it was a gravity warlock or a spatial mage, they were all unexpected existences. Of course, the ragtag team also had many hidden classes. Of the 7 hero classes, 4 of them were in the ragtag team. However, this group of people usually liked to cause trouble everywhere, snatch bosses, and earn some money along the way. They had never thought of participating in competitions or anything like that, so the advantages of hidden classes were not developed much. This was because both hidden and hero classes were completely different from normal classes. Normal classes had a complete skill system, and once a player reached a certain level, they could go to a teacher to learn high-level skills. As for the other rare skills, they had to be obtained from bosses and characters. However, the skill system of hidden classes was not complete from the start. Apart from the few skills learned at the beginning, the other skills had to be obtained by themselves. If they could not obtain them, they would have to learn the skills of normal classes. Hidden classes were even worse, as they could only learn the skills of normal classes. Because of this, although hidden classes were strong, they had many limitations. After all, whether it was equipment or skills, they were both very exhausting. A person's energy was limited. While they were chasing equipment and money, they naturally could not take into account the perfection of their own class's skill system. Therefore, even the strongest player in Chuanjin, Wang Yu, did not have many rare skills, let alone the others. This was also thanks to the fact that everyone's hero class could learn normal skills. Otherwise, the hidden class account would have been ruined by this group of people. At this point, someone would definitely ask, then why does the Templar battle team have such a complete skill system? What a joke! The Templar battle team had the support of tens of thousands of major guilds. The Templar battle team didn't even need to worry about equipment, potions, and other resources. The Templar battle team naturally had the time to acquire skills. This was also the reason why so many top players wanted to join Big Guild. Strength in numbers was not only reflected in combat power, but also in the fact that it was easier to get things done. With a professional team and resources, they could save a lot of time to do a lot of things. If Chuanjin also had tens of thousands of underlings, Wang Yu's skill tree would definitely be more terrifying than the Templar battle team. It couldn't be helped. Who didn't want to be a little more high-profile? but their strength didn't allow it. At the end of the day, it was because the foundation was not strong enough, and the hardware facilities could not keep up. Before this, the people of Chuanjin had never felt that there was anything good about having tens of thousands of subordinates. On the contrary, once there were so many of them, they felt that it was very stupid. At this moment, everyone finally felt the weakness of having a weak foundation. It's too late to cram now. At this point, the crowd couldn't help but ask, "Eh?" Hearing what everyone said, Wuji was suddenly startled. That's not necessarily true. After saying that, Wuji looked at Wang Yu and the others and said, "The four of you, have you learned all the skills you can learn?" This. "I don't think so." After being asked by Wuji, apart from Wang Yu, the others revealed a trace of embarrassment. When it came to things like skills, it wasn't better to have more skills. Instead, it was better to have more suitable skills. This was because skills required time and effort to grind proficiency. Under normal circumstances, everyone would have a skill tree that was suitable for them, and they would usually focus on grinding the proficiency of these few skills. Expert players also had their own unique skill combinations. Having too many skills would only make things more troublesome. The hero class was a class that could learn all the branch skills of the class. There were many skills that could be learned. Apart from Wang Yu, who was a martial arts grandmaster who had gathered the strengths of various martial arts, ordinary players would be dazzled by so many skills. Therefore, although Chun Xiang and the others could learn many skills, they didn't learn many. "It's never a bad thing to have more skills," Wuji said calmly. "There's still one more night. It's enough for you to get used to all the skills. It's very likely that you'll be able to use them tomorrow." "What about us?" Exquisite Dream and Mingdu asked. Although the two of them weren't hero classes, they were from the hidden branch, so there weren't many regular skills that they could learn. "Old Dream, you haven't appeared much, so the other party doesn't know you well. As for Mingdu," Wuji glanced at Mingdu and said, "You bastard, why are you causing trouble?" Speaking of shameless scum, Mingdu was definitely the number one in Chuanjin. There was only one mage in the guild, and he was also a nominal disciple of Archmage Reynolds. Although he wasn't a hero class, he was no different from a hero class. Usually, when he was clearing dungeons, doing quests, and farming bosses, all the mage equipment and skills were taken by this bastard. To put it bluntly, Mingdu's attributes were the most overpowered in the entire game. The degree of completion of his skills was much more comprehensive than Wang Yu's. This guy's lack of strength was purely a problem with his mechanic. It had nothing to do with other factors. After a round of discussion, the motley crew finally realized the difference between themselves and the top expert. Although it was a little late to cram at the last minute, it wasn't completely useless. It was better to mend the pen after the sheep were lost. It wasn't too late to figure out what went wrong. After figuring out the situation, everyone hurriedly entered the game and did what they were supposed to do. Knock, knock, knock. Seeing that everyone else had entered the game, Wang Yu was about to enter the game since he had nothing to do. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knock on the door, Wang Yu was a little puzzled. In this foreign country, the unfamiliar Wang Yu didn't know anyone. Who would be knocking at the door at this time? Creak, with a face full of doubts, Wang Yu opened the door. "Hi. Your Excellency Iron Ox." At this moment, a blond man greeted Wang Yu with broken Mandarin at the door. "I'm sorry to disturb you at this time." "It's you." Wang Yu knew the man in front of him. It was the boss of Pantheon, Uranus. He had met Wang Yu a few times before. However, Wang Yu was also puzzled by this kid's sudden visit. He wasn't familiar with this kid. They just met each other. "What's the matter?" Wang Yu asked in puzzlement. "Of course. Can I go in and talk?" Uranus asked with a smile. "This is not convenient." Wang Yu turned his head and glanced into the room. The room didn't belong to Wang Yu alone. If such a guy who could become an enemy wanted to enter, he naturally had to ask for the opinions of others. If there's anything, just say it at the door. We're afraid that the media will misunderstand. Just when Wang Yu didn't know how to reject, Wuji's voice came from behind. P.S. Happy Lunar New Year. Chapter 1890. So, it's Sir Wuji. Seeing Wuji, Uranus smiled slightly. Is this how the country of etiquette treats its guests? To avoid arousing suspicion, Wuji said faintly. After all, that's what the Eight-Nation Alliance said back then. Haha. Wuji's mouth was much more venomous than Wang Yu's. After being rebuked by Wuji, Uranus smiled awkwardly. Sir Wuji, you're exaggerating. I'm only looking for Sir Iron Ox to talk about some personal matters. Let's talk here. Let's not beat around the bush, Wuji said firmly. He had no intention of letting Uranus in. It wasn't that Wuji didn't have manners, but during the competition, it was best not to have such interactions. After all, this competition was a matter between nations. If it was a domestic competition, it did not matter if they visited each other. However, it was an international competition. If there were any mistakes in the results, the netizens in China would definitely label you as a traitor, regardless of whether you did it or not. It was not like this had never happened before. Naturally, Wuji was not the kind of person who was afraid of other people's gossip. However, a gentleman would not stand under a collapsing wall. Of course, it was best to avoid such things as much as possible. What was the saying again? Naturally, one had to be on guard during crucial times. Alright. Uranus saw that Wuji was so difficult to deal with, so he said helplessly, then I'll be straightforward. Having said that, Uranus turned his head and asked Wang Yu, Sir Iron Ox, how do you plan to develop in the future? Hearing Uranus's words, Wang Yu was dumbfounded. What does my development have to do with this kid? So, Wang Yu asked Wuji, what does he mean? Poaching. What else can he mean? Wuji said calmly. The Pantheon Temple's old trick. Poaching experts when they see them. They don't lack money. Oh, Wang Yu nodded and then replied with a posture. Actually, I don't have any plans. I just want to show off my martial arts. Wang Yu's answer was somewhat unconventional, and Uranus had no idea what Wang Yu was trying to say. Well, Sir Iron Ox, Uranus said with a sincere expression, I'm asking you this question very seriously. I'm also very serious. Wang Yu said confidently, You don't think I'm joking with you, do you? Our Pantheon can satisfy anyone in terms of salary. I hope you can consider it. Seeing how Wang Yu was feigning ignorance, Uranus decided not to beat around the bush, and got straight to the point. Not interested. Wang Yu shook his head. Just name your price, as long as you're satisfied. Uranus thought that Wang Yu was dissatisfied with the treatment, so he threw out his conditions and let Wang Yu name his own price. This was the highest treatment in the gaming industry. It was almost equivalent to filling in a check. Even Uranus himself did not have this kind of treatment. Now that he was offering such conditions to Wang Yu, it showed how much Pantheon valued Wang Yu. Forget it. Wang Yu waved his hand stubbornly. I don't want to go, why? Uranus asked, puzzled. They were all professional esports athletes. It was true that they wanted to win glory for their country, but compared to real money, it was much more meaningless. It could be said that among all the athletes Uranus knew, the purpose of participating in competitions was to get better treatment. As long as the money was in place, there was nothing that couldn't be poached. Since Wang Yu was so stubborn, could it be that his former employer was richer? Or did this guy have a close relationship with his former employer? Of course, this was not a problem for Uranus. As long as he knew what Wang Yu wanted, he could find the right solution. No reason, Wang Yu said. We don't even speak the same language. Why should I play with you? Wang Yu's answer left Uranus speechless. The language problem was really a big problem. He couldn't force others to learn Chinese just because of Wang Yu. For these geeks, learning Chinese was much more difficult than winning the world championship. Would they learn a foreign language more than Wang Yu? That was even more unrealistic. If he wanted to earn money, why would he be forced to learn? Your Excellency Iron Ox, you are not brushing me off, are you? With this reason, Uranus felt that Wang Yu was joking with him. Cut the crap. At this time, Wuji couldn't stand it anymore. He said unhappily, "Don't you understand? I don't want to go. Why are you still wasting time here?" Although the captain of the ragtag team was Wang Yu, the main body of the ragtag team was Chuanjin. The real leader was still Wuji. Poaching people in front of Wuji was really not giving Wuji face. Not to mention the captain of a top team like Pantheon, Wuji would make it hard for anyone else. What does it have to do with you? Uranus was still unhappy about being rejected by Wang Yu. Seeing Wuji come over, he couldn't help but retort. This retort didn't matter, but Wuji's anger flared up. Good, poaching my people and asking what does it have to do with me? This son of AB*TCH is really as arrogant as the rumors say. There was no coward in Chuanjin, and Wuji wasn't a good-tempered person either. He immediately narrowed his eyes and said, "He is a member of our team." "I know. So what?" Uranus' attitude was still tough. It seemed like this kid didn't take Wuji seriously at all. In fact, thinking about it, strength was the most important thing in the esports circle. With Wuji's strength, there was no need for Uranus to take him seriously. "Nothing much," Wuji said calmly. "I hope I don't meet you in the competition." Uranus laughed and said, "There are many people who have said this to me. Without exception, they were all defeated by me." "Is that so?" Wuji said calmly. "Then it will be different this time. Wait and see." Uranus said disdainfully, "Don't disappoint me." After saying that, Uranus looked at Wang Yu again and said, "Your Excellency Iron Ox, I hope you can consider my words. I will wait for your reply. This is my business card." As he said that, Uranus handed over a business card. "Not interested." Wang Yu glanced at it from the corner of her eyes and flicked the business card out of Uranus' hand. She then reached out and closed the door, leaving Uranus in shock. What was the relationship between Wuji and Wang Yu? To put it bluntly, they were friends. Wang Yu didn't have many friends since he was a child, and Wuji could be said to be Wang Yu's best friend. If Uranus spoke politely to Wuji, Wang Yu might look up to him. However, Uranus was so rude to Wang Yu's friend, and Wang Yu certainly wouldn't give him a good look. P.S. I went out to meet a friend today and was stuck in a traffic jam on my way back. I just got back now. So miserable. /4_4613/ Chapter 1891. How was it? How did that Iron Ox reply? After Uranus returned to his room dejectedly, everyone from Pantheon gathered around him. "Nothing much." Uranus shook his head. "That Iron Ox is easy to talk to, but the people around him are extremely annoying, especially that cleric. His every move disgusts me." Uranus was also an extremely smart guy. People like him were fearless in everything. Their only weakness was that they were afraid of others seeing through their thoughts. Although he had only exchanged a few words with Wuji, Wuji's gaze seemed to be able to see through Uranus. Moreover, every word he said was able to poke at Uranus's most annoying spot. This kind of guy was truly disgusting in Uranus's eyes. What kind of treatment can he give? He actually wants to keep such an expert in the team? Hearing Uranus's words, the others were somewhat puzzled. As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. In the professional esports circle, whoever gave the best conditions would have a stronger team. An expert like Wang Yu would not appear even in a few hundred years. What kind of ability could an amateur team have to offer such a god to them? "It's not a matter of treatment," Uranus said. "Some people don't only care about money." Having said that, Uranus said, "From their performance, this group of people should be a team made up of very good friends. The treatment probably won't be of much use at the moment. Then what do we do? Didn't the boss say? Hee hee. Uranus laughed. In such a situation, of course we have to solve the problem from the root. Since they value their friendship so much, we should start from this aspect and dissolve their relationship. How do we dissolve it? Everyone was a little surprised. Of course we'll provoke them, Uranus said calmly. Are you kidding? They're all friends playing a team together. It's not like they formed a team temporarily. What kind of conflict can there be? The others questioned. Hee hee. Uranus laughed. Did you guys notice that evildoers run wild? What do you guys think of his strength? He's pretty good. Hearing this, everyone nodded and said, although this guy added points to the extreme, his skills are extremely strong. Even we don't have the confidence to defeat that kid. Do you think there won't be any conflicts between the two of them who are far stronger than the others in a team? Uranus said proudly. It had to be said that Uranus' thinking wasn't wrong. Two tigers couldn't share one mountain. As a player of a top-tier battle team, Uranus definitely understood this point. Every top-tier team would have a core expert. The value of a core expert was naturally higher than that of the others. In order to become a core expert, everyone would put in a lot of effort. Moreover, some of the core experts' characters weren't all that great. They were very self-centered when they played, and it was common for them to attack their teammates when they weren't happy with their teammates. So, the competition for the core experts was also very intense in every team. However, every single member of a top-tier team had the potential to become a core expert, so the conflict between a dozen or so people wasn't that obvious. However, the ragtag team was a team of amateurs. There were only a few experts, and one of them was even a girl. The competition between the core experts of such a team was much more obvious. After all, they were all experts, and everyone had the heart to compare. What the boss said makes sense. Everyone was in the professional circle, so they were naturally aware of the dirty dealings in the team. Towards Uranus' words, everyone felt the same way. When I came, that fatty was hiding downstairs and smoking, Uranus said with a smile. Uranus smiled and said, I have told him about my idea. He was very happy and said that he was willing to help us. That kid wouldn't lie to us, would he? Everyone asked cautiously. That kid is very smart, Uranus said. He was afraid that I wouldn't keep my word, so he wrote me a contract. Lie? Will he still be in the professional circle in the future? In the professional circle, integrity was the most important. This was because no one had sold themselves to their current team. Transfers were normal operations, and experts naturally had to manage their own credibility. A contract was equivalent to a contract, and under normal circumstances, everyone had a copy. First of all, evildoers Run Wild had agreed to help Uranus deal with Wang Yu. This was an extremely dishonest act. Uranus had the contract from evildoers Run Wild. If evildoers Run Wild took the money and didn't do anything, Uranus would post the contract, and evildoers Run Wild's reputation would be completely tarnished. Let alone the fact that evildoers Run Wild had taken the money to help evildoers Run Wild. Even if evildoers Run Wild was just going along with the plan, transfers were bought with money. No one would be willing to use money to buy a spy. Of course, they would also be very wary of evildoers Run Wild. It had to be known that the higher the expert, the higher the value of a transfer. Evildoers Run Wild's value was obvious. He definitely wouldn't ruin his reputation for a bit of money. Of course, the above was for esports players in the professional circle. Evildoers Run Wild was the owner of a motley crew. This kid didn't rely on competitions to pass his days, using money to bribe his opponent's boss to cheat his own team. Only Uranus could think of such a thing. Moreover, who was Wang Yu? He was evildoers Run Wild's brother. He was evildoers Run Wild's idol since he was young. Even his in-game character was modeled after Wang Yu's face. Wasn't it ridiculous to ask evildoers run wild to deal with Wang Yu? However, Uranus couldn't be blamed for his lack of intelligence. The key point was that no one would have thought that the boss of a team would participate in competitions personally. Moreover, he wasn't even a captain or a team leader. After knowing Uranus' thoughts, evildoers run wild almost laughed on the spot. After returning to his room, evildoers run wild handed Uranus' written contract to Wuji. Wuji sneered as he looked at Uranus's contract in his hand. The morning sun shone through the window onto Kyoto Stadium. Under the anticipation of thousands of spectators, the most exciting finals of the S-Rank Pro League had finally arrived. Under the lead of the staff, the 5 teams entered the venue amidst the cheers of the audience and took their seat. There were a total of 5 teams in today's competition. The competition was the same as yesterday. There were a total of 4 matches. The competition was still randomized. First, 2 teams would fight each other to determine the top 3. Then, 2 teams would be randomly selected to compete in the finals. Finally, it would be the battle for the championship. The teams that were able to fight their way from the elimination round to the finals were definitely the best of the best. The process of the competition would definitely be more exciting than the previous few days. Chapter 1892. The detailed information of the major teams had already been explained yesterday, so there was no delay in today's meeting. They went straight to the main topic and began the competition. The lights in the venue dimmed, and 2 beams of light began to flash between the 5 teams. A few seconds later, the 2 teams in the first match were selected. Team 9 States versus Team Traders. Team 9 States, like Team Templar, was a veteran team. Since the day the esports industry began, Team 9 States had represented the national team in various competitions. After several generations, it could be said to be brilliant and illustrious. Not only had they won various awards, but they had also once monopolized the S-Rank World Championship. They were the team with the most fans and the most awards. When Team 9 States was mentioned, the players all gave them thumbs up and felt proud. As for the strength of the 9 Provinces team, it didn't need to be too far off. Although in the new game mode, their past achievements were negligible, as a team that had directly fought against a motley crew, even a great expert like Wang Yu had a very high evaluation of them. Their standard had obviously reached an extremely high level. Not to mention ordinary people, was evildoers run wild not strong? They had once suffered a loss at the hands of Team 9 States. During the domestic professional league, everyone's level was not very high, and their skill systems and equipment were not very complete. Team 9 States had already reached such a level, and now that everyone's skill systems and equipment had taken shape, their strength was naturally much higher than in the past. Comparatively speaking, Team Traders was relatively young. Although they had participated in many international competitions, compared to an ancient team like Team 9 States, they were still considered newbies. However, in terms of battle records, the Renegades battle team was clearly inferior. This wasn't to say that the Renegades battle team wasn't very skilled. It could only be said that they were rather unlucky. In their first international competition, they had encountered a similarly rookie team, Pantheon. At that time, Pantheon had gathered all the strong players in the world, and one could imagine the outcome of Team Traders. In the next few years, Team Traders did not know what had happened, but every year, they would be defeated by an upset team, and many times, they would stop at the top 8. This time, they were a little luckier and actually made it to the top 5. Overall, Team 9 States was stronger than Team Traders in terms of individual strength and overall strength, and the match went on without a hitch. 30 minutes later, the first match was over, and Team 9 States took the lead with an overwhelming score of 5-0. An hour later, the second match was over, and the 9 Regions team once again won 8 points. After an hour and 15 minutes, the third round of the team competition ended. Team 9 Regions had a perfect ending, scoring 20 points and winning with an absolute advantage, successfully advancing to the next round of the competition. At this moment, only Pantheon, Templar, and Rabble were left in the arena. The audience couldn't help but break into a cold sweat for the motley crew. Wang Yu and the others also felt the pressure. If their opponent was the Defiant Battle Team, they might have been able to easily make it into the top 3. However, the remaining 2 battle teams were both bona fide super battle teams. Fighting against such an opponent would not be as easy as the previous battles. Ayaya! Can that motley crew really do it? Below the arena, among the 9 states team that had finished their matches, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks looked at the remaining 3 battle teams with a worried expression. To be honest, at first, I was afraid that they would embarrass themselves, so I didn't want them to fight in this match. However, this group of guys has fought until here, and I still hope that they can make it into the top 3. After all, our national server hasn't had a second team make it into the top 4 for a long time. I really hope that Pantheon and Templar can fight each other, so that we can have one less strong opponent. I'm afraid it won't be easy. At this time, 9 Heaven's Godly Arrow shook his head and said, "The remaining 2 battle teams are all heavyweights. Let's not say that they are all experts at the level of Iron Ox. Even if the others are at the level of our 9 states battle team too, this match will be easy. However, with such a bunch of baggage, it will be difficult to win. Things are not so absolute." 5 Lakes 4 Seas smiled and said, "I think that their chances of winning are not small." "Why?" The others couldn't help but ask in surprise. "You guys have seen it too." 5 Lakes 4 Seas pointed at Wang Yu and the other 2 and said, "With these 3 people, it is relatively easy to get 3 points in the first match. In the second match, as long as any one of the 3 of them is randomly chosen, it will not be difficult to score points. The last team match is about tactics. Don't forget who their tactical brain is, tactical brain." Hearing 5 Lakes 4 Seas words, everyone raised their heads and glanced at Wuji. Their hearts were all shocked. Before Chuanjin became famous, this group of guys from 9 states battle team already knew Wuji. Their understanding of Wuji might not be any less than Wang Yu's. Naturally, they also knew how much of a scammer Wuji was. Back then, 5 Lakes 4 Seas had invited Wuji to join 9 states battle team several times. Although Wuji had rejected the invitation with the excuse that he was busy with work, one could imagine the skill level of a guy that made 5 Lakes 4 Seas visit the thatched cottage 3 times to invite him. Chapter 1893. The second match was between the Templar battle team and the Rabble battle team. Seeing this result, the audience had different expressions on their faces. The majority of the audience was very excited. After all, in yesterday's match, both the Rabble battle team and the Templar battle team had performed very well. It was bound to be a fierce battle between the 2 teams. There was also a small portion of the audience that was more regretful, such as the fans of the 9 states team. In the eyes of the 9 states team and their fans, the Rabble battle team was only SOSO, while the Templar battle team and the Pantheon battle team were the true opponents of the 9 states team. If the Templar battle team and the Pantheon battle team had met in the second match, the 9 states team would have one less strong opponent. Unfortunately, the system seemed to have thought of this as well. Out of the 3 choices, it didn't choose the Templar battle team and the Pantheon battle team to fight one-on-one. It was truly a pity. However, when the Rabble battle team saw that their opponent was the Templar battle team, they were more or less glad. Although everyone knew that the Templar battle team was strong, the Templar battle team was still considered an old opponent. Moreover, everyone had seen the Templar battle team's match yesterday, so they had some understanding of the Templar battle team. The Pantheon battle team had always been a mysterious team. In the past, their battles were always one-sided. In yesterday's match, the Templar battle team even had a bye, so everyone had no idea of the Pantheon battle team's strength. The disparity in information could determine the outcome of a match. Meeting a familiar opponent was ultimately more relaxing than meeting an unfamiliar opponent. Under the gaze of the audience, Wang Yu and the Templar battle team entered the competition room. As the leader of the Templar battle team, Meng Shi naturally followed them in. Looking at the familiar girl in front of him, Wu Ji glanced at Ming Jian Daoxue and couldn't help but ask Meng Shi, "Hey, are you just going to watch them beat us up like that? What else?" Meng Shi glanced at Wu Ji and said, "For them, earning money is more important. For this kind of commercial professional battle team, the salary was directly linked to the battle result. The higher the battle results, the higher the salary and bonus. In front of money, they didn't care if the leader was the boss's daughter or not, and the one paying them wasn't Meng Shi." "Can't they go a little easier?" Wu Ji asked in a low voice. A motley crew. Unexpectedly, as soon as Wu Ji's voice fell, the staff on the side glared at Wu Ji and reprimanded him. "Please watch your words and actions. I have the right to terminate your competition." "Haha, it's just a joke," Wu Ji said. "I'm just testing to see if they're as honest as I am. At the same time, I want to see how your team will react to cheating." "There's no need to probe," the staff said sternly. "Esports adheres to the 3 principles of fairness, justice, and openness. We will not tolerate any violations." "That's great. That's good." Wu Ji smiled faintly, then went into the game cabin as if nothing had happened. Miss Meng Shi still wanted to argue with Ming Jian Daoxue, but she was also warned by the staff. "You 2 teams better fight properly. If you have anything to say it in the arena. Don't whisper." He entered the gaming cabin and started the game. Players from both teams appeared on the stage. The home team for this match was the Templar team, so the venue for the first match was chosen by the Templar team. After yesterday's match, the Templar battle team had a deep understanding of the Motley Crowd battle team. Moreover, having fought against the Motley Crowd battle team, they also knew how strong Wang Yu was, as well as how strong the other members of Quan Zhen were. Of course, the Templar team only had a few people, but they were able to crush the rest of Quan Zhen's team except for Wang Yu. At this moment, they naturally didn't feel any pressure. As for the strength of to place one's pride, even the 9 States team could see how he suddenly became stronger. As a team that had fought against Quan Zhen, the Templar team was naturally aware of it. Therefore, the few points in the first match weren't too important to the Templar team. As long as they did well in the next few matches, they would be able to secure victory. Therefore, Lok Bai still chose the arena as the venue for the first match. Lok Bai was still the first to fight, leading the way for the team. The first player from the Motley Crew team to fight was Wu Ji. Seeing that the player from the Motley Crew team wasn't an expert like Wang Yu or Evildoers Run Wild, the audience was a little surprised. Lok Bai's face was also filled with displeasure as he asked, "Where are the experts in your team? Why didn't you let them come instead of sending trash like you to your death?" Faced with Lok Bai's mockery, Wu Ji wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and said, "You know, the Motley Crew team has always taken the right approach. The reason why you let me come up is definitely because your strength is at my level." Lok Bai was also unlucky. There was no need to waste his breath on a person like Wu Ji. He wouldn't be able to gain any advantage anyway. Being mocked by a guy like Wu Ji was just asking for trouble. While the 2 of them were trash-talking each other, the countdown ended. Priests were a relatively weak profession. Lok Bai had seen Wu Ji's skills before, so he didn't hold back at all when the match started. He pointed his right hand at Wu Ji and used Earth Attraction. The gravitational force under Wu Ji's feet instantly increased, and Wu Ji's movement speed decreased by half. After reducing Wu Ji's speed, Lok Bai floated into the sky and aimed his staff at Wu Ji, ready to attack. But at this moment, Wu Ji calmly pointed his staff at the ground and imitated Wu Ji's actions, floating up into the air. Unlike Wu Ji's Earth Attraction, which used gravity to achieve levitation, Wuji's flight was a real flying skill. The effect of Earth attraction only existed on the ground. After Wuji used flight to leave the ground, he immediately came into contact with Lok Bai. Without saying a word, Wuji rushed towards Lok Bai. Lok Bai's Earth attraction was not a flying skill, so it could only keep him floating in the air. His movement speed was naturally not as fast as Wuji's flight. It wasn't the first time Wuji had used this self-destruct style of fighting. Lok Bai was already prepared when he saw Wuji flying towards him. Without waiting for Wuji to fly in front of him, Lok Bai immediately extended his right hand and used gravity to lock onto Wuji. With a lift of his left hand, large pieces of the stage floated into the air and surrounded Wuji. Go to hell! Then, Lok Bai clenched his right hand and in an instant, all the floorboards covered the sky and smashed towards Wuji. Bang 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 bang! A series of crashing sounds rang out, and Wuji was instantly drowned in attacks that covered the sky. The floorboards smashed into Wuji's body and turned into clouds of smoke. The gray smoke covered the sky. The entire arena was filled with a choking smell. Chapter 1894. Of course, anyone who read manga would know that there was smoke, no harm. Before the smoke dispersed, Wuji emerged from the smoke, his body wrapped in a layer of golden holy light. Holy shield! Seeing the golden light on Wuji's body, everyone couldn't help but cry out. While everyone was still in shock, Wuji had already rushed in front of Lok and shouted, "Reckoning!" Lok Bai was already very fearful of Wuji's self-exploding style of fighting. At this moment, when he heard Wuji's shout, Lok Bai did not even think as he subconsciously spread out his arms. Instantly, with Lok Bai at the center, the air distorted. Bang! Wuji was sent flying by a huge gravitational force. However, just as Wuji was sent flying, Wuji raised his staff and a white flame floated towards Lok. Holy flame! It turned out that Wuji's shout was just a feint. The holy flame was the real skill that he was going to use. Everyone knew that holy flame was a directional skill. Once it was locked on, it couldn't be dodged. Although Lok Bai's gravitational wave could deflect all attacks, the holy flame slowly floated to the top of Lok Bai's head and entered his body. At the same time, an ellipsis appeared above Lok's head. Silence. After being hit by the holy flame, Lok was silenced. Once a player was muted, they couldn't use any skills. Mages, on the other hand, had to rely on their skills. This was especially true of Lok Bai. Lok Bai was difficult to deal with because his skills were very strange. No one knew the weaknesses of his skills, so the players who fought Lok Bai were very passive. However, under Wuji's sacred flame, more than half of Luo Bai's cultivation was crippled. Under the silence, Lok naturally couldn't maintain his spatial attraction. His whole body swayed and he fell from the sky. As he fell, Lok was in a state of weightlessness. Wuji chuckled and pounced on him. At this time, Lok Bai was muted and had lost his balance. Not only could he not use any skills, but he could not even use the most basic of attack. Seeing Wuji pouncing towards him, no matter how hard Lok Bai struggled, it was useless. In the end, she was still held tightly in Wuji's arms. The moment he held Wuji in his arms, a dazzling holy light burst out from his body. Reckoning. Reckoning was a skill that dealt true damage. No matter how high the opponent's defense was, the damage dealt would not be less, even if the opponent had an invincibility skill. After all, invincibility was a priest's unique skill. If reckoning was ineffective against invincibility, wouldn't it be shameless for a priest to activate Holy Light Shield and self-destruct? This setting seemed to strengthen the priest class, but it was actually protecting the other classes to a certain extent. Poor Lok Bai had been invincible in the past few matches, defeating countless opponents with ease. But now, he was sent flying out of the arena by a mediocre support player using such a despicable method. Seeing this scene, the audience's jaws dropped. No one would have thought that a seemingly invincible class like Lock Bai would be completely countered by an ordinary support class. I really didn't expect a priest, a support class, to be able to counter Lock Bai. Yeah, he's a genius to be able to discover this, that's right. In the audience stands there was a lot of discussion. On the other hand, Lock Bai's face was dark. Logically speaking, Lock Bai was also very confident in his class. Even he didn't expect that his class would be countered by a support class priest. As the saying goes, everything has its weakness. No class was invincible. Lock Bai could tolerate being countered by his class, but everyone had their own secrets. However, everyone had their own secret. At this moment, Wuji had exposed the weakness of his profession in front of everyone. Lock Bai's depression was unimaginable. After all, Lock Bai was originally known as an invincible existence, but now he had fallen from his pedestal. Only Lock Bai himself understood the difference. Not bad, Wuji. How did you discover this kid's weakness? As soon as Wuji got off the stage, he was surrounded by the motley crew. In the past, Lock Bai had clashed with the Quanjin sect, so everyone had an impression of this kid's strength. Now that Wuji had actually defeated Lock Bai in a duel, the people from the Quanjin sect were naturally very surprised. Weakness? Wuji pretended to be cool. Meeting me is his weakness. It has nothing to do with his class. F*CKU. Everyone raised their middle fingers at Wuji. Their original respect for him had vanished into thin air under Wuji's forceful act of acting tough. If this was said by Wang Yu, everyone would definitely believe it. However, coming from Wuji's mouth, there was a hint of shamelessness in it. The Templar battle team was a heavyweight among the top experts. Whether it was in terms of mentality or strength, they were the strongest. The loss in the first round had little impact on the Templar battle team. As usual, the spatial mage Jeff went up for the second round. As for the motley crew, it was Yang Na who went up. Phew, when Yang Na stepped onto the stage, a series of whistles rang out from the audience. Since Rebirth was a holographic simulation online game, the players had to go through a lot of hardcore battles. It was a test of their fighting abilities. In this aspect, female players were much weaker. Even if they had the same stats, female players would still be much weaker when facing male players of the same level. Therefore, in the top professional arena, female players were very rare. Female players with strength were even rarer. As for Yang Na, she was an exception in this competition. Although she was a woman, both her strength and methods were very frightening. Everyone still couldn't forget the scene of her forcefully inserting an eye and blinding a person. Such a powerful woman would naturally be revered by the audience. Moreover, Yang Na looked quite good. She was definitely an idol with both strength and strength. However, Yang Na's opponent, Jeff, wasn't weak either. This kid hadn't fought many times, but up until now, he hadn't been able to last more than 2 moves against Jeff. In yesterday's matches, Jeff faced his opponent twice. The first time, he killed an opponent in 1 move, and the second time, he annihilated his opponent with 1 move. Such a terrifying performance caused the audience to jokingly call Jeff the Waist Cutter Demon King. This was because this kid's first move was Dimensional Slash, and Dimensional Slash could always split his opponent in half from the waist down. At this moment, the 2 people on the stage were terrifying fellows who had left a shadow in the hearts of the audience. Who was stronger and who was weaker was naturally the focus of attention. Since Yang Na wasn't present when the Templar battle squad besieged the Quanjin sect, Yang Na and Jeff didn't actually know each other. However, both of them had watched yesterday's match, and were extremely fearful of each other's strength. The 2 looked at each other, and revealed a cautious expression. As soon as the match started, Yang Na narrowed her eyes and raised her hand to shoot a shock arrow at Jeff. At the same time, she rushed towards Jeff's direction. Duong. As a mage, Jeff's agility naturally couldn't compare to that of an archer. Yang Na's arrow flew and hit Jeff, forcing him to take a step back. Yang Na followed closely behind and rushed in front of Jeff. P.S. Today was really tiring. I woke up in the morning and drove more than 100 miles back to my hometown. I drank with my friends from 12 to 6 in the evening. When I got home, it was already 8 in the evening. What's even more annoying is that my parking space was occupied. 5 times in a week, I really have to give it to the estate management. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.